It's time for MacBreak Weekly. I'm wearing my Halloween garb. Alex Lindsay is not, nor is, sad to say, Jason Snell, nor is Andy Anako. In fact, I'm really here all alone, but I'm glad you're here, keeping me company. Put on some weird stuff while you watch the show and make me feel better. We do talk about the big Apple announcements. This is Apple Week. We've got a new iMac, a new Mac Mini, what's coming tomorrow, and what is Apple Intelligence doing so far? All of that coming up next on a special Halloween edition of MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 945, recorded Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. 80 out of 80. Happy Halloween, everybody, or almost Halloween. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, and there are gifts under the Halloween tree. But first, let's say hello to Jason Snell of sixcolors.com. Hello, Jason.
It's a spooky tree. But
it's
there
the
are gifts under
nightmare
it.
before Christmas.
That's right. It's the Mac-mare before Halloween. I don't know. Happy Mac Week. Happy Halloween Week.
Happy Mac Week. I really like this, but we'll talk about it in a second. Also, Andy Anako from WGBH in Boston. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. Hope you enjoy. I'm wearing my skeleton costume, but the party's not till later tonight, so I'm wearing muscles and skin and body hair over it.
I love that.
I don't want to look like an idiot.
Yeah,
it's
that's
great, great costume.
The drilling has begun once again in my studio, so apologies for the low hum.
It's not your headphones.
That's certainly
It's
not.
not.
It's really happening.
He's got in the next room over there.
We made a
Who's making
mistake.
sure that only kids who have perfect teeth get candy.
Oh, that's good. Very good. Also here, Alex Lindsay from officehours.global and 090.media. Hello, Alex.
Hello. I guess you could say that these releases are scary good. You know?
Ooh.
Yeah. So,
Scary Fast was last year.
Yeah.
These are scary faster than Scary Fast, aren't they?
Yeah.
The M4s. So is it going to be every day this week? What do you think?
Yes.
They're
I mean,
still-
John Turnus, they've been releasing these videos, and today's video, it's like a little advent calendar. We can throw that in there as the similes here.
Ooh, the Halloween
it
advent
is,
calendar.
He said, we'll be back tomorrow with another great Mac announcement. So, I mean, there's one left on Mark Gurman's checklist, which is the MacBook Pro. So it would not surprise me if that is tomorrow.
Yeah, and Jaws tweeted out last week, "Oh, we've got a whole week of Mac announcements." So yeah, right now we are. I mean, like Jason said, we are kind of checking off. Like, okay, he said we'd see this, great, check off. We see into Mac Mini, check off. Amazon was also nice enough to post the sales page early, so we got a little extra sneak peek at that.
A bonus.
And so now we're just waiting for our MacBooks.
and we now have learned that it's 8:00 Pacific Standard Time. I think that Amazon's thing was someone screwed it up and thought it was 11, 6, whatever. It's 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. or whatever. Whenever it came out, it's probably 3 hours offset or somebody just got a time zone issue and released it. Oh, I thought it was 8:00 Pacific, whatever.
Somebody's breaking down boxes starting tomorrow, at least for the next 3 months.
Office hours is running during that time. So on Monday we were surprised. By Tuesday we were like, hey, we're just going to stay on the show here for another 5 minutes and see what happens.
Find out what's
so at 8:00 and there it was, and so we were excited.
So they started Monday with a new iMac, new colors.
Yeah.
All
Same-
of this
sort of
is
same
available
colors,
a week
but
from
new
Friday.
shades of those colors anyway.
Oh, it's the
right?
same colors but different shade. I like the purple.
They
That's
look
very
nice.
purpley.
They look really nice.
Yeah.
They're very colorful.
And
an
they are,
M4.
of course, as everything will be this week, based on the M4.
Yeah. Big upgrade here. And if you were to think back to when the M1 iMac was released, it was released shortly after they introduced the first iPad that had center stage. And we thought, okay, Apple's doing it. They're going to have auto tracking for video from now on in all their products. And then they came out with the M1 iMac, and it had a 720p or whatever webcam, bad webcam that didn't do center stage. It was too low quality. And they did the M3 iMac, and they didn't make any changes to the hardware at all. Good news, the M4 iMac has a 12 megapixel camera and does center stage. So actually, as a webcam, it should be much better than the one that was in the previous iMacs. That's I think in some ways, other than the chip and the things that come along with it, the biggest change to the whole thing is that they've got the proper webcam now.
They hide the expensive one. So funny. Maybe it's because I have a expanded view, but the fourth one
really,
is hidden below.
They really get you in the last row. That's when they get you.
$18.99 is this is the 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU, 24 gigs of memory, and 512
that's just getting started though.
storage.
Well, like
Yeah,
that's like you can
get 2 terabytes and a whole lot of RAM, and it'll
I got a Mac Mini up to almost $5,000 this morning.
Mm-hmm.
So,
really?
Yeah. It's easy to do.
Yeah.
So new on these iMacs, nano texture glass. That's the matte finish, right?
Yeah, nano texture, all the things. I actually think that that's a brilliant choice for the iMac. You might think like the iMac's low end. Why does it need that? But the thing is, iMacs are in environments, right? They tend to get placed, a lot of them placed in places because we have our environment and we're going to put this Mac there. And you don't get to choose but there's a window behind me. It's like, too bad. That's where the iMac goes. So I think iMacs probably suffer a lot of glare problems and less than a laptop where you could just take it somewhere else or rotate your chair or whatever. They have to actually just sit there and take it. So having nano texture is there. And then in terms of as the chats are saying, the various chats, with a lot of this, the 8 gig RAM floor seems to be gone, right? Like Apple seems to have finally just said, look, 16. And we're going to talk about there's some interesting quirks on the Mac Mini that we'll talk about in a minute in terms of how they're laying out the RAM. But here it's just straightforward. It starts at 16 and 256 storage, which again is kind of meager, but it gets you in the door, and it's fairly easy to buy outboard storage if you really, really want it. Get a Samsung drive on Amazon, 2 terabytes, pretty cheap. So, but yeah, it's the webcam and the base storage, and there's some good stuff. And nano texture again. I think it's good because if you are parked at a desk or a table or a hotel check-in or wherever, and there's a big bay window behind you, like you're screwed. So, nano texture, get them to you pony up for the nano texture.
Is this the nano texture? You have to have a special cloth to clean.
You don't have to, but it helps. I'm sure there's a cloth in the box if you order the nano texture. Yes, because you're supposed to just sort of you're not supposed to put stuff on it or you mess up the texture layer. Yeah.
Disappointed that it maxes at 32 gigs of memory. That's establishing it as a non-pro device. Right?
I mean, it's a limitation of the base M4 processor, right? It's like if you want more, get more.
And also the most important thing was to get rid of that 8 gig floor, because even when they were saying, let me explain to you idiots why it's not important on a Mac.
It's 8 gigs on a Mac is the same as 16 on a PC.
That's like when they retooled the MacBook and got rid of the SD slot. And they said we feel as if that photographers are using wireless to transfer photos now, and you can see the words turning into molten brass in their mouth because they know that they're just we got to say this. So yeah, so long as they change the floor, that's fine. 32 on an iMac, that's fine. This is as Jason said, it's the pretty Mac. It's the one where you take it out of the box and it looks dynamite, where there's all kinds of colors, not just because some people want a purple iMac, but because the decor in that salon might need something that's lilac. And so it's not going to be, I mean, the fact that it's still, I'm slightly disappointed that if you bought one as your main Mac, I think the cheaper ones only support one external display. The top of the line one supports 2, so there's a limit there. That's compared to the Mac Mini that supports 3 out of the box. But it's for what it's supposed to do. I think it's very well kitted out for that. It looks like a beautiful Mac, and
technically it is still 3 displays, right? Because it's the Mac, it's the iMac plus the 2 other displays.
But even the super cheap, the $599 Mac Mini will support 3 displays. That's what
absolutely.
I should have said.
And 32 gigs is probably enough for a solid 98% of the population. When we talk about I wish it would go number 32, I was like, who really needs it? I mean, you can edit a lot.
I'm sorry. I think it's more about future proofing than anything else, because it's yet to be discovered what not only the AI apps of the newer versions of Mac OS are going to need, but also that plus any AI enabled apps that you choose to install yourself. Like how much RAM is proving to be like the stumbling block started like 2 years ago with phones saying, oh, well, there are features that are great built into Android or that Samsung is developing, but we can't give it to you because you don't have enough RAM. We've seen that before.
But
so
on phones, it's been like 8 gigs,
most,
right? I mean, it's not been
right. But
32.
But again, that's the future proofers. I think people who are maximizing RAM, that's always a good idea if you still have money left in the kitty, because it is the one thing that you can't expand upon. You can get a Thunderbolt drive with 2 terabytes of SSD storage, and it works just great. You can't do anything about RAM, but it's so long as they give you enough of a ceiling that you feel as though you are going to get that 5 or 10 years that you often expect to get out of a Mac. That's a good move. I'm glad they did it.
All right. They are claiming that the M4 in this iMac is twice as fast, 1.7 times faster. In one place it said 1.7, another place it said almost twice as fast as the M1. That's a big jump, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a big thing if you're thinking about upgrading from an M3. I don't know about an M2, but if you bought an M1 to get onto the Apple Silicon bandwagon and you haven't upgraded since then, those people are really going to see some stuff when they upgrade to M4. Those are going to be the most valuable upgrades.
I think one of the challenges for Apple really is that I think intelligence makes a lot of sense for them for getting people to upgrade, because these M1s, these M series are so fast and the M4 is so fast that there aren't that many apps that actually challenge the processors. I mean, we find that, I have M1s that are 8 gigs, and they will put out 8 1080p 30 signals out of a Blackmagic card, and they run at about 55%, and that's the early 8 M1s with 8 gigs, And so this one, I think if we take something like Zoom ISO, we're gonna probably do head-to-head soon with it. I bet you we can put out as many as Zoom ISO will let us, and we'll still be at 25, 30, 35% of the capacity. And that'll be like 16, 1080p outputs coming out of this thing, of raw video. And I think that is, so the challenge you get into is if people don't use these for games, if they don't use them for those things, the games constantly are pressing it. I think that some of the announcements that Apple made about the ray tracing thing, by the way, as someone who used to render a silver highly reflective chip, is kind of you're like, sure. It's fine.
Well,
ray tracing is an easy. It's easier than it sounds. The ray tracing calculation is easier than it sounds. So it's great to throw it into hey, but for me, I'm like, hey, how about real time global illumination? And then everyone doesn't want to talk about that. So ray tracing, you're kind of like, okay, sure, knock yourself out.
Two things. There's so much that is unknown about the next 2 or 3 years everywhere in computing, and AI is the question about that. And there was a comment in the chat, Louis MJ, and that's predicting AI is even going to take off in the future. It might not. Who knows? But the thing is that I'm wondering if the difference in headroom between what an average user or even an aggressive user needs versus the most current silicon is, if that's going to shrink, because the most expensive thing about AI is that you can create these really great features in Adobe Photoshop, these generative editors, these generative AI features, but you want enough that those makers are going to want as much of that to run on the actual silicon as possible, because anything that they have to do on servers is going to cost them. So I think that a lot of the overhead is going to increase if these AI features become a big deal. As for ray tracing, I'll absolutely take your word for it. It is a big deal because it's another sign of how aggressively Apple is pursuing gaming. It's like, it would be so easy for them to concede that, well, we feel as though we have products that are really great gaming computers. They're just not for AAA games. They're not gaming. They're not going to compete with a $4,000 custom-made PC that is engineered specifically for gaming. They're actually aggressively going for that. And when you talk about doing ray tracing as something that the hardware can handle on its own, that's customized to handle on its own, when you look at game demos of here's ray tracing turned on, here's ray tracing turned off, that's the difference between, wow, that's really good graphics, and wow, that's graphics. So I think that's very impressive that they continue to put in a hardware feature into the CPU that really, I think, is just for gaming. It's not for normal people.
I think as a person who does CGI, you always look at it going, hey, it's great to talk about the easy stuff and not talk about the hard stuff. so you'll ask about global illumination, or we'll say, hey, it'd be really great if you had really good anti-aliasing, like without any. So here's if you watch your favorite game or anything in Unreal, or for those of us doing graphics, just look at the curved edges and look at the angled edges and look at the little stair step that goes down that edge. That's aliasing. And the way to fix that is to render it at 2, 4, 6, 8 times bigger and then scale it back down again. And it blends that all back in. And being able to do that at 140 frames a second is a thing. Like that, you say we have 4x or 8x anti-aliasing, you have my undivided attention. If you say I have ray tracing, you're like, okay. Sure, knock yourself out. So but that at high frame rates with anti-aliasing, I personally think that makes more of a difference than ray tracing. And because there's a lot of ways to cheat reflections. And so they sometimes when they do those demos, you feel like they turned off a lot of things they didn't need to, and then they turn on ray tracing and they're like, look at the big difference because I rendered everything I rendered without any ray tracing. So I think that's
you're saying back in the day with the Star Wars thing.
Also, for what it's worth, the ray tracing was an M3 generation, I believe, innovation. So the M3 iMac also had this feature.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and again, I think I think that Apple's going to have a hard time getting gamers to come over. They really need to think about building a couple. I mean, I know they have Apple Arcade and they hire people to do little games, but they need to think about like what it would take to build a AAA game, and I think that, the irony of all of this is the company for them to partner with, I mean, which would be hard right now, but would be Bungie because Bungie started on a Mac. Bungie, Halo is just Marathon, which started on the Mac. It'd be really fun to bring them back into the fold.
Yeah. Well, one big deal just to close this off is that it's not about making sure that trying to make the Mac into a AAA gaming platform and getting people to see the iPad and the iPhone that way. That's a little bit about selling Macs and selling iPhones and iPads. It's mostly about selling transactions through the App Store, because the Apple App Store absolutely kicks the Android to Google Play stores, but in terms of money spent per user, it's by factor of 4 or 5, I think 6. Last time I checked was last week, but the numbers are kind of fading from my mind. But the lion's share of that, I think close to half, is entertainment and in-app purchases, and that means that if you can sell somebody a $60 game, you might also be selling them hundreds of dollars of in-app purchases in the future. And if you get 30% of a cut of all that, then Apple's very, very well impressed by here's how well we could benefit by getting more developers comfortable with porting their AAA games over, including that new tool for just porting Windows games straight over to their metal.
Then I think that the challenge really is again, they need apps like AAA games because they need them to push the hardware, because right now the hardware is running away from the apps, and this is the problem the iPad has had forever. The iPad has way more horsepower than almost any of the apps that sit on top of it use, and so being able, Apple needs to be constantly working with folks that are going to push that envelope out, so that they, and I think that as we look at a lot of the spatial computing and so on and so forth that Apple's talking about, the processing for spatial video is going to need the pros. Like these Mac Minis and iMacs don't even start to be able to have the power that's going to be required to do 8K per eye, 90 frames a second kind of work. So it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out.
All you nerds can talk all you want about those things, but I'm going to tell you what people really care about. 2 things. One,
come with stickers. Does it?
No, it doesn't. I bet it doesn't. We'll find out on November 8th.
I got a bunch of new of the Apple trackers, and by the way, there is a limit. I've hit it. It says
how many is the max number of trackers you're going to have? 24, 32, 64?
I think it's like 30 or 40. Hold on. Let's see. Hold on. It doesn't number them, but I think that I'm at 30. I think it's 10. Yeah, it's 30. 30. It looks like 30. 30 is the. I'll have to look. I mean,
I can't even imagine what your phone would look like if you wander away from all of those AirTags. 30 notifications say, "Hey, they're not. Hey, wait. Hey, no, you're not. Never." So this is what people really care about. One, look at the wallpaper on the new iMac. Look at it carefully. It says iMac.
I love that every single piece of new packaging. Like if the Mac Mini says Mini, the iPhone Pro has Pro hidden in there. It's like my goodness, and it's subtle too. You almost pat
I didn't
yourself on the
see it
back
till
for
somebody
spotting it.
told me, and then I had to really look, and then now I can't unsee it. But yeah. The other thing is they did.
I'm so
put
glad
types.
Apple's paying people to do that. I should say as an aside, Apple paid somebody to here's your time budget for doing these wallpapers
want it to
and this
look
product
like
to hide these words in.
Macy's Day balloons, but it should say iMac. How about that? Can you do that? The other thing is, of course, Type-C charging on the mouse and the keyboard.
Yep.
And let's get this out of the way. What the hell? It's still underneath the mouse.
Who cares? It takes like 2 minutes to charge. What, every 3 months?
Indeed.
Who cares, really?
It's low hanging fruit. If it's, and I would understand it if it were practical to use this. Well, actually, if it were practical to use this mouse in any way, shape, or form, but I digress. But it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're making fun of that, where else are you going to put it? Because you're going to sacrifice the looks. And once again, it's like complaining about how the Apple Pencil, you have to remove a cap to plug it into USB. Like, again, you're going to be charging this up rarely.
Literally, if you have to go to the bathroom,
Yeah.
plug it in, and it's good for months.
It's that fast, really?
It is that fast. I think you can get. They said you can get all day from 5 minutes or 2 minutes or something, and it lasts for a long time. And yeah, John Gruber actually wrote a piece defending it, which he seemed surprised about it. But he said he talked to somebody at Apple who's a designer who said they absolutely looked at doing different designs with it not on the bottom, and they thought it looked bad and was bad, and that's not they. And I think that this, yes, it's an easy to take a cheap shot. Totally doesn't matter and is irrelevant in people's lives.
Hey, I like cheap shot. Cheap shots are mean.
In this economy,
what are they going to do? Want to invite you?
Best, most economic.
That was excuse me, but that was a cheap shot.
That was a very expensive shot. I will have you know.
Anything else to say about these iMacs before we move on? Because there is other stuff to talk about. I just want to make sure we cover it thoroughly. Thunderbolt 4 video app. Wi-Fi. What is it? Wi-Fi 6E? Is it that we are getting now?
Yeah, I mean it's a low end. It's low end computer is what it is. Yeah.
But it has high fidelity 6 speakers system with force canceling woofers. I don't know where. Somewhere in there.
That's impressive. They put the money into that. I mean, it's not surprising that Apple would always make sure they have the best sounding whatever on the block. But the iMac is not necessarily like meant for
iPad
that.
Pros sound pretty darn good, actually. So I imagine
absolutely.
it's a similar configuration, since this is basically an iPad on a stick. A 24-inch iPad on a stick. It's so thin. It weighs 10 pounds.
It's a great little computer. It's one of those computers that I wish that I had a use for, but I don't.
100%.
Because it's beautiful. I mean,
we have one in the gym.
I get one to review, and I'm always sad when I send them home afterward because they're beautiful and fun to have around, but it just doesn't fit. I mean,
Lisa likes to cosplay a towel boy, so she checks me into the gym on her iMac. And says,
"Look, whatever keeps it fresh, man."
Yeah.
I don't. She wanted one down there. We bought her one at the studio, and everybody. I was smart enough not to, but everybody said, "Don't get an iMac now. There'll be new ones." But she bought it, and now we have it, and there's not much we could do with it, so it's in the gym. So if she needs to get online in the gym, she can.
Yeah. David Shaw in the chat reminded me of targeted display mode for the old iMacs and how great it was.
I missed that.
You could, I mean, even when the thing was like useless as a computer, it wasn't just beautiful as a static object. It could be a very, very pretty external display. For a while, I had one as my my living room setup with a Raspberry Pi setup with it, and that's a lovely way to add extra value to the cost of the product.
Carl is saying in our YouTube chat, let me click the right button. Carl is saying, oh, thank you, Jerry. We appreciate that, but I didn't mean to click that self-congratulatory chat message. He's saying you could put your own drive in. Is that the case, or are these kind of unopenable?
No, you would attach that externally, and I mean I've done that. You can just, for an iMac, you just Velcro it on the back, tape it on the back. It's fine.
Is it as fast on Thunderbolt 4 as an internal drive?
I mean, finding a Thunderbolt 4 SSD will be more expensive than just like USB 3. So it really just depends on how much speed you need. And right, like I would pay enough, like since I do video stuff, I would probably want enough space that I could be exporting my project and rendering my project on the internal stuff that's the fastest it possibly can be, but I can stash a bunch of other stuff externally.
And I think it depends on how fast it is. Like with my older Mac Studio, it's 5 gigs a second internally. There's no way to get to that without a iodine. There's an iodine drive system that will let you plug into all the Thunderbolts in the back. Then you can get back to the same speed. But outside of that, you can't get up about 3.7.
That's fine.
So I want
the upper limit. And that,
I want to say about
the thing. But when you stack 6K raw files and you're trying to edit them in Resolve, that's when it stacks.
You should do that on an iMac, is what you should do.
Studio.
Target display mode. That was another thing that every time I review an iMac, I point out that like they took it away for good reasons. When that first 5K iMac, like it's like there wasn't a connector that could do external 5K at that point, right? Like they were doing wild stuff on the inside to do it exactly right. However, we have come a long way, and I would say that one of the worst things about the iMac as a product is that it is not, the display will last probably. There's that story about how some of the M1 iMacs are having display issues, so we'll see. But like theoretically, a display will last a lot longer than the computer's usable life. And what you should be able to do is repurpose it as an external display. And Apple should absolutely, if they're I'm getting a little mad about this because I did this when I reviewed the M3 iMac. If Apple's committed to the environment and is boasting about their carbon neutral this and carbon neutral that, you know what's good for the environment is making your iMac displays repurposable after they're done with their natural life as a computer. And it's really shameful that they haven't done that yet. They could totally build it that way so that you could put it in a mode where it just becomes a monitor, and they haven't. And at this point, they don't have an excuse.
It'd be lovely if all they did was work closely with Google's Chrome OS team and make sure the Chrome OS Flex works great on pretty much everything they do, which is really just a case of not making sure that if there's anything that is kind of in the way, that there's a way to get that out of the way, because that's the simplest way to recycle any old machine at this point, because Chrome OS Flex will give you a brand new, essentially the latest version of Chrome. And so the latest security, latest updates, everything like that. I think you're absolutely right there. It breaks my heart when I go to like my town's recycling center and I see I know these are rehabable machines. I know that they're, without even taking them apart and taking out the panel and ordering from AliExpress a new display interface, you can turn it into like HDMI or whatever like that. It's like there are people who need these and there are people who can actually use these. Why are we throwing them away? And I'm glad you mentioned that about the original M1 generation iMacs. Apparently on Apple support, there are a bunch of users complaining that they're getting a whole bunch of horizontal lines on the bottom of the screen that seem to have something to do with a bad connector, but it's out of warranty, and so you might be SOL. I hope that if this turns out to be an endemic display problem, Apple can figure out a way to at least make you feel less hosed for not buying 10 years of Apple Care in advance.
I also like it that I can buy an iMac to match my shirt.
One for every mood, every shade.
I will be buying the orange iMac just for the days that I wear this orange shirt. Thank you, Goofball.
It's nice.
We do have viewers in TikTok.
Another quirk of the iMac is that they are continuing with their program of having color matched peripherals. So if you get the orange iMac, it comes with a color matched orange keyboard and trackpad or mouse or whatever you decide to order. Those aren't available to everybody. The ones on the store are just I think the silver and the dark gray. And so you have to do, otherwise, if you want to do it, you have to do what I did, which is wait a year and then go on eBay.
So pretty.
Go on eBay and then buy the orange one that you always wanted, but you have to, you can't otherwise get it. So they will be there eventually. I understand why they wouldn't necessarily want to stock all of them in stores. It's a little bit too bad you can't just order them online. If you want an orange keyboard, you could get one, but just wait, because some people don't like Apple keyboards and they will sell them on eBay. And so you'll be able to get them later.
Yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense because once you buy it, it comes with it, right? And if you don't want to use that funky mouse, you want to use a mouse that actually charges from the back, for instance, you might replace those, right?
And then you can sell it.
and then you could sell it.
It's a collector's item.
Make some money.
Just like there are people who sold off the black USB-C cables off of their Mac Pros because that's the only black Apple, or was it a Thunderbolt cable, whatever. It's like, there are people there are people who are now like middle-aged and they've got all their retirement money saved up, or they've struck it big in their 20s and 30s, and they don't care about spending $1,000 on a cable if it goes matchy. And those of us who are, again, we're freelance journalists in a rapidly collapsing market, there's a reason why we don't throw things away.
All right, let's take a break because there's other stuff to talk about. I want to get to the Mini, of course, spend some time with that. Apple Intelligence arrived this week also. Yep. I mean, let's not give that short shrift.
Yep.
In 2 ways, okay. We got 18.1 and 15.1.
Yeah.
15.1 for Mac OS Sonoma, or Sequoia, I'm sorry. And then 18.1 for iOS and iPad OS. And also watches got updated, TVs got it, everything got it. So we'll talk about that as well. We have lots to talk about. This is MacBreak Weekly. We are so glad you are watching the show. And if you watch it live, you are watching now on 8 different streaming platforms. I mentioned we've added TikTok to the mix. So our esteemed club members, $7 a month, ad-free versions of all the shows, additional content we don't provide in public. Those esteemed club members get club access inside our Discord. There's a YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit/live, twitch.tv/twit, which might be a little bit confusing, but there is a difference. There is x.com, no longer Twitter, but that's good. Facebook, LinkedIn, Kick. Missing one. Anyway, there's 8 of them. And if you want to watch, remember, we are going to change to standard time next week. So we are currently at 11 a.m. Pacific. This will not change, 2 p.m. Eastern. But around the world, some people are in summertime still, some are not. It's confusing. Our UTC will be now at 1900 UTC. So you can tune in one of those live streams. Really, the best way to watch, though, is subscribe or watch on YouTube so you don't have to do it while we're on the air. Our show today brought to you, I'm very happy to say, Zocdoc. Yeah, that's a name you want to remember, actually. There are some things in life, it's okay if they're kind of random, a total crapshoot. Trying a new kind of milk in your coffee. Did that the other day. Didn't work out so good. Or a cheap Instagram ad impulse buy. I do that every night. Or my favorite lunch choice on Tuesdays, gas station sushi. Okay, take a chance. But when it comes to finding the right doctor, that should not be a total crapshoot. And with Zocdoc, it's not. Because you have more options than you know. Zocdoc, Z-O-C-D-O-C. It is a free app or a website. You can use it any way you want, where you can search and compare high quality in-network. That's really important. In-network doctors that take your insurance and are near you if you want. You choose the right one for your needs. And in many cases, you can book within 24 hours. Just click to instantly book an appointment. We're talking about in-network appointments with more than 100,000 healthcare providers across every specialty: mental health, dental health, eye care, skin care, and a whole lot more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who are a good fit for whatever medical need you have. But here's the thing I really appreciate the most. Verified ratings from verified patients who describe their experience with a doctor, and they're all real patients. There's no fake reviews in there. That's huge because A, when they're highly rated, they're really highly rated. But B, there's different styles. Different doctors have different ways, and different people. Some people want a doctor who's going to explain every possible option. Some people want the doctor like me. Just tell me what I could do, doc. Just one thing. I don't want to. It's too confusing. But those are 2 different styles. You can look in the reviews and find a doctor that matches the style you're looking for. And Zocdoc appointments happen fast, typically within just 24 to 72 hours of booking. In many cases, you can even score same-day appointments. It really is a great system. Stop putting off those doctor appointments. Us guys, we rub dirt on it, right? Right now, stop putting off those doctor appointments. Stop rubbing dirt on it. Go to Zocdoc.com/MacBreak to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. Zocdoc.com/MacBreak. We thank him so much for supporting the show. We thank you for supporting the show by going to that address. That way they know you saw it here. Zocdoc.com/MacBreak. People are saying, what is Leo wearing It's Halloween. Day after tomorrow. You're going to be a busy boy on Halloween, Jason, because Apple's quarterly results will come out then. You have to make all those colorful charts.
I'll have to make some charts, run my scripts and generate my charts and see how much money they made. And
is there anything in particular you're looking at, like any kind of little clue? Apple doesn't tell you numbers of sales and things like that.
It's all revenue based at this point. I mean, we'll get maybe some initial insights on how they're feeling about the iPhone, because the very beginning of iPhone sales, right? Because it's from basically the end of September. So there's a couple weeks of iPhone sales that'll be in there. So they'll be able to characterize it, but you won't see the huge number that happens the following quarter, the holiday quarter.
They'll give us some color.
Yeah, there's always a little color in there. But we'll just see how they. Oftentimes, the statements that they make about what they're thinking for the next quarter are the most important thing that they say.
Yeah, and no Vision Pro specifics in all likelihood.
Seems unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, it might get the passing. This has been a terrific year. We've shipped many groundbreaking products, including the Vision Pro, and with the debut of Apple Intelligence, will keep us on the forefront of blah blah blah. I'd be surprised if they don't say the words. It'll be a box on the bingo card, but they won't mention that we think that maybe we might have sold a little bit less, but almost as much as we had hoped that maybe we would have.
Right.
And I think that there's a new guy who's developing a new app for it.
If I had a prediction, they would say, we released the groundbreaking first narrative film for Vision Pro, Submerged, this month.
Yeah,
good one.
That's all you need. They probably will talk about China and India. The new iPhones will be, it turns out, partially assembled in India now, which is, of course, the next biggest market after China.
Yeah, there's a report that not just like partially assembled, but like the next version of it, that's putting you right in the big leagues immediately. I imagine that. Tim Cook was in China last week, and
reassuring the Chinese as well, right?
Yeah, I mean that must have been kind of a testy meeting, because number one, he has to convince. He has made public statements again in the Chinese media saying, no, we are great. We really rely on China. We love their manufacturing. We've got a long-term partnership with them. At the same time, clearly they're hedging their bets with India and doing so aggressively. They're not just trying to meet some sort of government requirement that some of the phones sold in India must be manufactured in India. They clearly are factoring India as part of their larger plans. At the same time, he had to be sort of sweet talking the ministers into, let's figure out how to get Apple Intelligence working in China. We definitely want that to happen. And please don't hold this over our heads as we continue to seem to be relying on you a little bit less.
Yeah. To his credit, he's good at cultural assimilation. 100%. Flash the traditional Chinese peace sign, which for some reason, I don't know, when I was there in 2009, all the girls who did selfies with my good-looking son flashed the peace sign. So I guess Tim is doing a selfie with the peace sign. I don't know.
I associate that with anime girls, but I'm old.
I don't know. Maybe it's still the thing. According to CNBC and some analysts, Tim Cook is likely visiting China to bolster support for Apple Intelligence. That's kind of interesting. President Biden just signed an executive order saying we're not going to sell them or we can't give them AI stuff that they could use against us. So not
only that, but the Chinese government themselves are not going to approve an AI that is not homegrown.
Right.
So whatever they do, and also if they're going to continue their same private computing strategy for they're going to have to figure out a way to get these custom Apple chips into China to make it work that way. And who knows if given that there are lots of Chinese trade bans and intellectual property bans, who knows if they'll even be allowed to do that. So that's kind of testy. There was as part of the Apple Intelligence announcement on the Apple newsroom site, they did say that AI is going to be coming to the EU early next year, but I don't think they can. I'd be really surprised if they promised any sort of a target date for China, because there's a lot of dancing they got to do.
Analyst at Counterpoint said the trip seems notable now as the company could be looking to shore up collaboration with local players to launch Apple Intelligence in China. They'll need a local partner for the LLM, I guess.
I think a lot of the AI stuff also gives Apple a little cover, though, because they're slowly moving out of China for a whole wide variety of reasons.
Right.
And so saying, well, we can't, like it's harder to do it here, and we have to move some of the stuff to other places, gives them a little bit of room to work because
or leverage, right? They say, hey, you want us to continue to manufacture in Shenzhen. I think we need intelligence.
It's probably less about leverage and more about if there's a war between Taiwan and China, Apple will not be able to produce anything in China. Like that, like they will, like that'll all go away. And so I think everyone's trying to, before the projected window of 2028, everyone's trying to get out of town. So anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, it's crazy. There was some good news for their work in China in that they are now, the iPhone is back in the top 5 of phone hardware in China, which wasn't the case for most of this year, I think. It's one of the big wild cards here is that like Huawei is believed by a lot of people in the U.S. government to be essentially a government-owned company at this point. At the very least, that they are very, very well attuned to. Here is what the government wants out of China's leading phone maker. So we were absolutely going to do what they asked to do. So there's a question as to if things either deteriorate or develop over the next 3 or 4 years. Is China even going to be terribly interested in giving the iPhone advantages over Huawei's phone? Already, they developed an entirely brand new from the ground up, the first brand new from the ground up mobile OS for their next, I think it's called Honor OS, to power the latest versions of Huawei phones, completely getting rid of the Linux kernel, completely getting rid of Android. It is 100% its own. And that's part of the strategy of we want everything to be absolutely homegrown and homemade, and therefore 100% within the control of any edict that we wish to hand down.
Yeah. Apple ships $6 billion worth of iPhones from India. Exports of the iPhone raised a third in 6 months through September. The total will probably be something like $10 billion in iPhones, according to people familiar with the matter, because Apple, of course, doesn't reveal those numbers. So, yeah, it's made sense. Strategically, Tim Cook, wow, he's a master of diplomacy, isn't he?
100%. That's a great thing. I mean, I don't think he would have gotten this far if not for the fact that he can do that dance. He can make everybody feel as though they're being listened to and a little bit happy. And let's just hope he keeps dancing on the right side of the angels and knows he and the people who he is negotiating with knows what line he can't be asked to cross because he would be forced not to cross it, and that would be disastrous for all sides.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I kind of teased you a little bit. I just stuck something else in. It's about impulse control. I know you want to talk about
Come on,
Mac
it's a palate
Mini.
cleanser. It's good.
It's a palate cleanser. It was just a moose boot, something a little bit between. Mm-hmm. So today, this morning, 8 a.m. Pacific, Apple announced the new Mac Mini. Were there any surprises? The one thing people seem to be noticing is that the power button's on the bottom.
That's fun. I mean,
it's got to be somewhere.
I mean,
it's got to be somewhere, says Andy.
No,
it's got to be somewhere.
As someone who has a stack of Mac Minis, it is a little bit inconvenient.
Yeah,
that's not. I mean, I don't really care. I know that people were talking about the
you never turn it off,
charger at the bottom of the mouse or whatever. I was kind of like, I don't think about that ever. Like you put it in for lunch and walk away and come back 2 months later. You have to do this again. But the power on the bottom is a little bit of a bummer because I've got 4 of them stacked up, and it's kind of like, okay, now I'm going to have to, like, if I want to restart them, it's not as trivial.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
But it looks like it's the same, roughly the same shape as the. It's like a short Mac Studio. Is that right?
Okay, so it's 2 inches high and 5 by 5, so it is half the size of the old Mac Mini in terms of volume, and quite a bit larger than the Apple TV. People really who are like, "Oh, is it like an Apple TV?" It's like, no, not really.
Small.
It's not that small.
It's probably not
a lot
quite
smaller.
half. Like it's 70, it's 80 versus 50. It's a little bit more than half. I mean, because it gets taller. It's like 5 by,
I think it's 100 square inches down to 50 square inches. I think it's actually about exactly half the volume of the Mac
we can
Mini.
check.
volume is weird, right? Because you're losing a lot in two of the dimensions.
I did the calculation. I think it's 80 versus 50, but it might not be. So it's not quite half. Again, it feels like I was like, oh, it's half the size, and then I actually did the math to figure out, like, is it really half the size? And I was like, well. And for the reason I bring it up is that a lot of us are looking at it like, hey, this would be great if we're going to have a higher density solution for our servers. And no, it's completely doesn't make any sense anymore. like it's, so like they definitely don't care about people using Mac minis in a server environment. Like that was definitely not one of the things that they thought through in this
Mac
process.
Stadium uses a lot of them, right?
Yeah, we think that you could turn them sideways and stack 8 of them sideways across a 3U, but the density would be marginally higher, but not a lot higher. And it's like one of those things, like if it was a little shorter or a little smaller, like, if it was just a little less on one dimension or another, we would get much higher density. Yeah. But right now we're not.
Right.
Do we know yet if it has
85 versus 50? So there you go, Alex. That's just so not quite half volume wise, but because it's slightly taller. Good math. Good mathing. Well done. A gold star to you, Mr. Lindsay.
I know how to use a calculator.
I did math. I the problem I had is that I did not know how high the old one was, and it is a little taller, right? But it's much narrower now, and it's really interesting. So surprises that they did leave Ethernet on all of them, that it's got full HDMI, that it's got a headphone jack, although it's on the front. So depending on how you use your headphone jack, that could be more or less convenient. But I think it's great. It's 5 ports, including 2 on the front, which it was always like in these Johnny Ive days, it was heresy to put ports on the front, but they did it with a Mac Studio, so we knew it was coming.
And it's also a great way to separate that some of them are USB-C, some of them are Thunderbolt, so they know that the ones in the back are the Tabasco ones. The one in the front is for your keyboard.
In a nod to American made, they are an even 5x5x2 and some random amount of millimeters. Right?
And it's like a 2x4. It's not really 2x4.
But somebody definitely decided that it had to be like even, like it's really easy to remember what they are, because they are because the last one was 1.41 high, and this one is
2. It's 5x5x2. It's like a little teeny tiny. If it was black, we can make it like a 2001 mini monolith. It takes you halfway to the end of time. Anyway, it's really interesting because it's a base model M4, but there's also the M4 Pro, which means this is the first time that we've seen that chip. The M4 Pro chip is it's got more cores. I think it's got 8 performance and 4
memory. The memory bandwidth is 273 gigabytes per second.
This is the most surprising single
4 performance, 6 efficiency cores on the bottom line, 8 performance and 4 efficiency cores on the Pro chip.
Right, 8 4 and the idea there is that's the 12 core is probably the full extent of the Pro chip, right? They have the bin versions, but that's the full extent of it with and a bunch of CPUs too. But the memory bandwidth, I think, is the real story here. With the M3 generation, when they rolled that out, we talked about it, that it was curious that the Pro was sort of like took a little step forward, and then the Max took a big step forward. And of course, we don't know anything about the Max chip yet because maybe tomorrow, right? What day is it? It's Tuesday. Well, then I don't know about other chips. But this one, like 75% generational improvement in memory bandwidth is huge. Like that is a big step forward. So there was a small step forward for the Pro chip last time, but a huge step forward this time.
It's more than twice as much. I mean,
120 gigabytes per second on the M4, 273 gigabits per second on the M4 Pro. They're clearly amazing. Not as much as they're making this cute little, like tiny little computer. They are clearly not marketing this as, oh, here's the meet Maxi, your family, your cute little tiny little pocketable Mac. It is this is some serious crap and serious stuff here.
And it's presumed that a Studio will then be with the M4 Max.
Yeah.
No, the Studio bandwidth is already 400 gigs, and the Ultra is already 800 gigs. So these are already, these are the M2s that are there. So if we see any kind of proportional increase in their speeds, wow.
What does this memory bandwidth give you, Alex?
If you're moving a lot of data back and forth between things, you have to hold that data. It can be a huge stopper, especially with huge amounts of texture maps or massive amounts of video or massive amounts of scientific data or massive amounts of 3D data, doing a variety of photogrammetry. All of these things kind of max out these systems as they start, and it really becomes a churn. So again, this gets back into what I was talking about. If I'm doing a bunch of effects on a bunch of on something in Resolve, and I've got a bunch of 6K or 8K footage, that bandwidth gets saturated pretty quickly, and so those are the kind of things that it will do well. I think that, again, it's not going to be, when you see these specs, you can't wait to see what the Studio and the Pro look like. But these, it's a really powerful machine. It's still not probably as powerful as, it's not. I don't think the top of the line here is competitive with the Studio, M Ultra or Maxes, but I do think that it is extremely fast I think the Mac Mini is the best bang for your buck for power
absolutely
of any computer made right now.
Yeah. I hope that it keeps the same role that it had historically, where there's always there's always been, if you are a power user but not necessarily someone who needs a Mac Pro, you can have the choice between buy a lower spec Mac Mini, but then do a build to order and give it all the RAM you want, give it all the storage you want, give it all the extra you want, get the best processor you want, or go for a low level pro level machine. I hope that's still going to be kind of a distinction between like the Mac Studio and the Mac Mini, where there's going to be a very clear jump to get to a Mac Studio, including 5 displays instead of 3, maybe a better fan. I'm assuming this Mac Mini has a fan. Looking at the side of it has vent holes. Okay, in the bottom, great. That was one small fear of mine, that they would say, well, we're going to have this throttled by heat performance, so that we don't really. So to make it fit that tight little space, we're going to have it all naturally cooled, but it would have been weird to have the same sort of features into a MacBook Pro that is absolutely going to have a fan. But yeah, I think this is. I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you guys. So it's the Mac Mini I definitely want. And it's the one that I can kit out exactly how I want, because I don't need to spend $5,000 on the top of the line anything, but I have certain needs, and if I can suit them better with a $599 base model machine that I can then spec up to $1,500 than I can with, say, a $1,500 Pro level machine. I think they've got that.
It could support 3 displays, which is nice. Also support for DisplayPort over USB-C. The Pro, actually it looks like the M4 and M4 Pro have the same video support. Yes, maybe a little bit higher resolution on the M4 Pro. DisplayPort 2.1 over USB-C, HDMI, 68 up to 8K resolution over HDMI at 60 hertz, 4K at 240 hertz. Wow.
It's not just the displays; it's the fact that these are a multiple of really good displays.
Yeah,
that's
high quality.
Pretty hot.
Yeah.
And Thunderbolt 5. That's the other thing, is it's Thunderbolt 5.
So what is Thunderbolt 5?
Thunderbolt 5 on the Pro chip, faster speeds,
3 times faster than Thunderbolt 4.
Faster speeds, more power, and then you combine that with the video out is different because there are more GPUs, so you can do 6K at 60, or so there's a little bit more there.
8K at 60, and
it says 8K, yeah.
You
can do one of each.
Two, and it's 120. I think it's up to 120 gig pipeline. 80 is the base for it, and so you're talking about being able to move 10 gigabytes. Theoretically 10 gigabytes a second, which is twice as fast as my Studio does internally. This gets into, again, if you're editing or you're trying to get in and out of things, being able to have something that has that kind of bandwidth is pretty exciting. And where this makes a difference for a Mac Mini is if you want to build a distributed rendering platform. So I want to have 10 of these able to do a bunch of distributed processing. The speed at which you can deliver that content to the thing, that oftentimes is the biggest bottleneck that we get into, is actually sending the frame. So let's say you want 10 of these to run compressor, or you want 10 of these to run a 3D render. How fast can you get that data to the machine is a big deal. And being able to have this kind of speeds is pretty exciting. And again, if you're editing something really heavy, a Mac Mini of this size with 64 gigs of RAM can absolutely do all the big editing that I was just talking about with 6 channels of 6K. But it's the drive speed that kills you. And so being able to have the new, I imagine OWC within a couple months will be delivering things that can do 8 gigs or 10 gigabytes a second. And now you can stack up a lot of these things inside of whether it's Resolve or Final Cut or others. You can have a lot of really uncompressed data that you're working with. You don't have to do any kind of, you don't have to burn anything in. Everything can be sitting there floating as you're working with it. So it's exciting. It's an exciting box. So,
yeah. But obviously, if it can do that, then you might want to wait and see what the studio will do. Will the studio be this week or no? It'll be next year.
Next year. Mark Gurman says mid next year that it actually slipped a little bit. But it's really 4 computers, right? You've really got, based on the 4 different chip models, you've got 2 Mac Minis and 2 Mac Studios. And I was thinking about this, that I've got a Mac Studio now, the base model, which has got the M1 Max chip, and then there's also the Ultra, and let's assume that they're going to do an Ultra this generation for this, and then you've got the M4 and the M4 Pro. Like, where do you fall if you want a desktop system? And there will be, maybe some crossover, but not in terms of the specs. You could spec up a Mac Mini Pro chip with a bunch of RAM and a bunch of storage and get it to be over what the starting price of the Studio probably will be, but not with the specs that you want. So
I think $27.99 when I did.
Yeah. I mean, my price went for 25 or something like that. But the question is, who needs the higher end one? Like I'm not sure I need anything more than the M4 Pro Mac
Mini. Do you need anything more than the M1 Max? Let's be honest.
Well, it's true. Actually, that's the truth of it. If I did, I would have ordered a Pro Mini today. And the fact is, my M1 Mac Studio is still great, honestly. Yep. And so probably I'll just wait and see what the Studio holds. But it's nice that they offer these things, because M4 base model is super powerful, and I know that it's got a little bit less storage than people would like and a little bit less RAM, although it's got 16 now, so that's good. Yeah. But it's still an incredible value. And then with the Pro chip, you have got a very powerful system. I have a friend of mine who works from home and is a creative professional in the film industry. And he texted me today and he was like, bought a Mac Mini because he had an old Intel iMac that was on its last legs. And this is a serious professional person. So like it's an impressive product on both fronts.
So you can so let's start with the highest end Mac Mini, upgrade it to the M4 Pro with 14-core CPU, 20-core GPU, 64 gigs of memory. That was $600. That's the Apple Premium right there. And you can go up to 8 terabytes of storage. But I think I'm going to do 2, yeah? Now we've got, this is the $27.99. I don't need 10 gigabit Ethernet. Nice, though. Alex, do you have 10 gigabit Ethernet? No.
I don't, but I'm probably going to,
someday.
The bandwidth now coming into my house, I'm trying to get it all upgraded to 2.5 gigs.
Right.
So
you would want that.
You start to think, 1 gig might, it starts to feel a little compressed now. So
a gig
and a reminder, by the way, if you're in education, all those numbers go down a little bit. So if you're a student, the M4 is the base starts at $499.
Wow.
So, yeah, exactly.
That's a great price. For a very competent
My kids are going to be so happy at Christmas.
Yeah. when you start, it's
you would prefer this than a laptop for your kids?
Yeah, because I mean, the thing is they do a lot of stuff at their house. They don't really spend a lot of time somewhere. If they do it, I mean, they both have monitors. The problem is that I really like the problem with iMacs is dealing with the monitor and the machine. Like my daughter wants to make music. It's easier for me to give her a Mac Mini with a monitor she can kind of place wherever she wants and have the Mac Mini where it needs to be to get all the instruments in and everything else. I find it very, and again, as someone who has a lot of monitors, I've got like 9 monitors up here. I have a hard time understanding like where would I put it? I look at the iMac and I'm like, where would I put that? Like I don't like all of my monitors hang on arms so that I can move them around and get them to where I want. And so when you get used to that lifestyle, it's really hard to go back. Like, and so having a computer that's contained and sitting on your desk seems like a really hard thing. And again, I think unless you really are going to be on the road, having a laptop doesn't necessarily, if you're using it at home all the time, doesn't necessarily make sense. So you're getting so much more bang for your buck from these Mac Minis with a monitor. You can go out and buy of course, you can get a nice monitor and then you're paying about the same amount. But I have one nice monitor that I can do color correction on. The rest of them are these cheap, $150 1080p, 24-inch. They work great.
Not only that, but we're forgetting there's almost a community of people that are like iPad Pro or even iPad Mini users that essentially had traveled with a Mac Mini as a headless Mac, and they use their iPad as a display for that. So that's going to make this even better. And the fact that the power supply is completely integrated, that's good news and bad news. It's obviously good news because it's just one simple cable that you can replace for like $10 if you lose it or if you want multiples of them. When we were talking about this a while ago, like about, wouldn't it be great if they made like an Apple TV sized Mac Mini? My fantasy would be that it would be powered by like power delivery over USB.
Yeah.
So that in certain scenarios I could just like power it with a power brick and just have that completely. But it's going to make that all those people really, really happy too.
I really wanted it to be that way because in our school in Africa, the number one thing that dies is the power supply. So we ended up with a bunch of PCs because it was too hard to update. It was too hard to fix them iMacs. Like we started off with 40 iMacs and over 10 years ended up with a bunch of PCs because it was just as the iMacs died one after the other with the PCs, we just replaced the power supply. So I was hoping to see it go to USB-C the same way you had it because you could also power, theoretically, with some of these bricks, you could power 2 or 3 of these iMacs or Mac Minis at one time. Yeah. But also, if it blows out the power supply, just buy another one.
Yeah, right. Even so, though, I mean, it must have gotten really close. I mean, the power on the specs page it consumes less than 150 watts.
Right,
and that's amazing. I mean, when I look at like even compact like Windows PCs, like they start at like 300 watts and stuff with this kind of power. If you don't limit yourself to like tiny little NUC-sized devices, like 500 watts is like almost the minimum that they consider to be a decent power supply for anything of any power. So this is an amazing accomplishment to get it to work in under those circumstances.
And I bet it very rarely gets to 155.
Sure,
watts,
that's max.
That's maximum. It's probably operating at half of that or less. Very quiet too. They say 5 dBA at idle, which is basically silent, even though it doesn't.
And they're saying the first completely carbon-free Mac. I think they're saying.
Yeah, first carbon neutral.
Carbon neutral. Sorry.
That means they're buying credits, though, right?
Exactly.
No, it's a combination. They changed the way they manufactured it, and they remember their power is all. Not credits. Their power is all green, and they're using it's 50% recycled materials in there.
Nice. Good job.
And there's a lot less aluminum because they say they're using a new process that uses much less aluminum than old processes did. So, yeah, that's all part of the story. This is, I mean, literally 14 years since they redesigned the enclosure of the Mac Mini the last time. So it's about time for this.
Also, we're all now very aware that when you make it smaller, all the great reasons that we like things that are smaller, including being able to Velcro it to the back of a display, but also that means that you can get more Mac Minis per master case, more master cases per shipping container, and now fewer shipping containers, so it'll cost less to ship.
Yeah.
What about, I mean, one reason people do buy PCs is for discrete graphics cards. What about graphics performance? Alex, do you have an opinion? Are they keeping up? Are they catching up?
For the vast majority of the audience, absolutely. You know, the integrated graphics, when you start looking at that memory, the memory bandwidth is really high compared to bus bandwidth, as well as being integrated with the CPU. So it's a different problem because you can cut these things. If you're building it for the computer, the way that you use the CPUs and GPUs is very different than the way you would use a discrete GPU. Now, for some of the stuff that I do, we still need NVIDIA and AMD cards, So these are, so it is like I have things that we do that we need 3 or 4 of them in one computer. I can't do that with, obviously we can't do that right now with any of the Macs. There is a world that needs more than what the Macs can do. When you're talking about a Mac Mini or you're talking about these things, I think that the performance is very, very good for 99% of the market. And I think that there is a 1% of markets that's going to still keep on buying Linux or PCs because they need more dedicated and specific hardware.
Yeah.
But I think that has to more, by the way, I think that has more to do with how the apps are written than what the computer can do. So when we talk to app developers who write from the ground up, and they write to the metal, literally, so when they're writing to metal and they're taking full advantage of all of Apple's APIs, the performance is outrageous on these machines. It's where people don't want to commit that much and they just want to port code, do what they did before, use the old ways of doing things, that you need a lot more horsepower. So it just depends on how much they dedicate their code to what Apple is proposing and the infrastructure that Apple is providing.
Metal's good. Metal's good, but you need to write to it, right?
You need, again, with any operating system, the more you abstract from what the operating system wants, whether that's Windows or Linux or Apple, the less performance you're going to get out of that hardware. Right. you're gonna just need to, because a lot of people are essentially lazy, and I mean lazy. I don't mean lazy like they're laying around. It's just that they don't want to. They've got a lot of other things
lying around,
but they're just not. They don't want to do that. If when you talk to, a good example is like Zoom. They have dedicated apps for every single platform,
right?
And it's written to take full advantage of every platform that they're interacting with, and it's why Zoom runs so much smoother than all the other video conferencing apps, is because they're writing something and they're not trying to abstract anything. They're taking full advantage of each platform, and so that's a good example. You see that anywhere an app, and that's why a lot of times we like to work with Mac only apps, because we know that developer is developing for the platform that I'm using, not trying to figure out how we get the same code to work on 3 different platforms. And that's, because that's never going to be as good as writing it straight to the OS's full capabilities.
Native. Yeah.
Native. Yeah.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly. The big Apple week continues. Jason Snell is here Thursday. He'll be covering the Apple quarterly results at sixcolors.com, his blog, with his world-famous patented colored charts. Are you going to do one for Halloween, like an orange and black chart, with a pumpkin?
Oh, it's an interesting idea, but probably not.
Thank you. Alex Lindsay is also here. OfficeHours.global. Do you do a Halloween show for Office Hours? No, you don't dress in costume, and
I'm not really a different thing kind of guy. Like I
know you're very consistent.
So I don't have a lot of so I don't really shift gears that much.
I do know you've added an iMac to your display behind you. Is that a keeping up with the Joneses thing?
This one here,
not an iMac, a Macintosh, an old Macintosh. Well, you got a Bondi Blue iMac.
I got a Bondi. This is a 24p Bondi Blue. It's not. Wow. It's not. It was like hand built for movies. This one here is the older
Classic.
one, the old Mac Classic. I've got some Elemental, just the plates.
I have the Elemental plates. After you said that. We apparently Russell had scavenged the plates. Wait a minute, I know the orange ones though, which is that good or bad?
Yeah, a lot of us were a little upset about the whole orange plate thing. We were come on,
this
man.
Kids was a $25,000 machine.
I just want to point out, not to show off, but each one of those plates was $130,000.
Oh my God! And we've effectively replaced it in software in the cloud, basically.
It's come a long way. The ones that
we used to need this to stream to a variety of platforms.
The ones that I had were still pretty competitive. Even though they don't even make them anymore, but 16 inputs with 32 individual streams is still pretty powerful. But so that's what those were. I got the Cube up here.
You got some good Macs there.
I like to, it's my wall of depreciation. Everything here used to be worth a lot of money.
The problem with the new Mac Minis, they'll be too small to even notice up there.
You wouldn't even see it. They're out of focus. They'd be like,
we got flying toasters running on our Mac Classic.
My Mac Classic doesn't work. I have to go.
This is actually a 128K Mac. This is the original, and it didn't work. The floppy didn't work. So John bought a device that you can plug into the floppy port that emulates a hard drive.
I want to just put I keep on looking at it. I should just put an iPad in there. Like just put an iPad.
Yeah.
Find an iPad and stick it back there.
I was going to cut out a piece of because I couldn't get the scan rate right. I was going to cut out a piece of white paper and just put with flying toasters on. But no, we got the scan working and everything. That's
awesome.
Nice. I love it. Also, Andy Anako, when are you going to be on GBH next?
I was already on last week, but you can catch me again in 2 weeks' time, the week before Thanksgiving. I think the Thursday before Thanksgiving at 12:30.
Yeah. Can't wait. Before we move on to Apple Intelligence, I would like to know, Jason, what's going to be tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday? What's Apple going to announce?
Well, Mark Gurman mentioned MacBook Pros, and we haven't seen them. So
Okay.
process of elimination,
M4,
that would be
MacBook
tomorrow.
Pros. Okay.
Apple results on Thursday.
So they won't do a product on Thursday.
I don't think so. And then Friday, free space. I think nothing, because then it's November and we'll all be recovering from
Friday.
Halloween.
Well,
So I
that's
think
a
it's
short week.
I think it's
Okay.
just Monday, Tuesday,
Just these
Wednesday,
three
and
products.
then
Okay.
the quarterlies. Yeah.
I am really tempted to buy a Mac Mini, just like you. I have an M1 Pro, or maybe a Max. Was there an Ultra M1 Ultra Mac Studio?
Yeah.
Okay,
I've got
so
the
Lisa,
Max. There was
I know I
Max and
got
Ultra.
Lisa the next one up, so she has the M1
Right, she has
Ultra.
the Ultra.
I have
I
the
remember
Max.
Yep.
But it's. I mean, I'm play Valheim on it. It's just fine. I don't feel like it's slow or anything. But this would be twice as fast, wouldn't it?
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Better
Your
graphics.
Keynote documents will be so quick.
Keynote will work great.
Yeah.
I don't need it. There's no justification for it, but it's so cute.
I think that one thing that's missing, I was thinking about it and I was like, how do you take full advantage of this? I think that, you could, when we're talking about encoding, you could build a piece of software that did really good, simple encoding that used one of these for $600, you could definitely do 4K, 60, HDR kind of things.
Just have it running in the background all the time.
Yeah. I mean, there's I don't know if it's on Mac or not, but AWS now has released the software that they use for their links to ingest into AWS. And I was thinking about, you can port it over.
It'd be a great little Plex server, the least expensive one.
I mean,
it'd be
the
great.
power of the Mac Mini for me has been that I modularize everything. So I've got a bunch of them, and they all do they have their own little jobs that they do really well. So,
do you give them little names like Huey,
no,
Dewey?
One's called Prezo, and the other one's called Zoom, and the other one's called,
okay.
That's what they do. But they do have their names on the front, so I know which one.
You have to. Yeah.
One thing that I actually I thought was kind of interesting. So they didn't have, when they have these big events in which they send the drones out to dive bomb the Apple campus and take those wonderful establishing shots, or they have a non-event where they just do a product video and they release that. This time, both for the iMac and for the Mac Mini, they did something in between. They did a 10-minute version of the dive bombing the campus, Apple campus, and having it looked like it could have been part of a larger event. I'm sure it wasn't, but I thought that was an interesting middle ground for them.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, Alex, about this. I wanted to ask Alex about this because it looked like the little characters, are those real? These little characters running around?
Yeah,
tilt shift.
That's a tilt shift lens.
It's tilt shift, is it? Because it looks like tilt shift.
It looks very cute.
It looks, but they did something really cute with it, which is not only a tilt shift, but it's time lapse tilt shift, right?
Yeah. So I
think that's pretty cool.
It does. It creates a great effect. We've used it a lot for openings and for shows.
Can we not? Can we not show it? Is that why you're not showing
Stephen Colbert,
it, John Ashley? Or am I going to get taken down if I show it?
Yeah.
No, you don't put the sound on, and you show it, and you crop it down by 75 or 25% and put it over something. It'll never get.
Yeah, you say that.
Wondering.
I feel like I've already run enough risks, so I'm not going to show it. Just look at it because it's cute. It's cute.
Anyway, it's cute.
Can I make a suggestion? Something we should have standing by. We should have a cheap 1080p HD monitor, HDMI. We should smear Vaseline over it, and every time we want to show an Apple video, we'll just basically have a camera pointing at that. And so we can at least
would Content ID be fooled by that? You think? Just for people who are going, what are they talking about? We get taken down instantly. We get strikes. I mean, they're serious about us. You might see it on other platforms, but for some reason, YouTube and Twitch, we get strikes.
Yeah. I think that to get back to the announcement, I think that while Apple probably was one of the key companies to make keynotes what they are today with Steve Jobs, I think they're in the process of disassembling that right now, which is that these shows. This is
this is a new strategy. This is not just for this.
I don't know if it's a new strategy, but it sure feels like it. And I think that it's great. Like, and I even wonder why you need to do 3 in a week. I think they could have done iMac 2 weeks ago and the Mac Mini last week. And
the advantage is there is some buzz with saying Apple is doing an event and people tune in to see what it is, and you get them all in one place. The disadvantage is if you are going to tell a story about 3 Macs, somebody's just going to there's going to be a headline about one of them. And instead there are headlines about each of them every day. So, I mean, you pick your poison, I guess, but I think this is a good setup.
I think that you could get to a point where Apple's releasing something every month. Just have, like a little 10-minute video about something new that they released, and and then you still have the big ones that are the
You have to do the iPhone announcement. You have to do that.
Different
and people and the world will tune in for that. And WWDC makes sense, but the others don't necessarily have to be anything but this. My one criticism of what they have done this week is that the videos seem super low key. Like, the videos should be much more easy to spot on Apple's website. They are posting them to YouTube, which is great, and to social media. But if you go to apple.com yesterday, there was not a way to watch the iMac video directly. And today is the same with the Mac Mini video. And even when you go to the page about the Mac Mini, the video doesn't show up. It's like a little thing that says watch the video, and it's super subtle, and I don't like that.
I wonder if they're pushing people to YouTube, because I didn't even think about watching on the Apple site. I went straight to YouTube. I was like, okay, let's go to the Apple page. And,
I doubt Apple wants to push people to YouTube.
Maybe, but I think that building up the YouTube presence isn't necessarily bad for Apple.
Oh no, that's where everybody watches, right?
I will say that I do think that they should stream these. I know that they recorded them and they're playing them out, but creating a little event that has that streams them out live, it's a lot more expensive, I will say. But I think that we would have stopped and watched it live if it was live, if it was a schedule. And so I think that there's a unified experience. Maybe they're going to save that for WWDC and for the iPhones, but I do think this makes so much more sense. I mean, they're making their case in 10 minutes. It's more compact. We get all the information that we want. I keep on looking at it going, they're shooting this on iPhones. Because they see at the end, they're all shot with an iPhone, and you're like, holy smokes. You don't think about it anymore. At first you thought about it, and I didn't think about it until I saw the little disclaimer.
Is there a tilt shift for the iPhone?
Now you can do tilt shift style with anything, any footage. It's a filter.
Oh, it's a filter.
So you can make it look, make it look like that.
I'm just showing my age. I used to have a lens that you would kind of angle and do these things, and there'd be little tweakers.
No, you can have it. It's a kind of it's a way that the focus works, but that can be definitely rebuilt. But I do think that I'm not sure that there's one space that they're talking in, when they announced the Mac Mini. I don't think that exists. I think that they've made up a space for that part of the announcement.
That's the observatory. That's their new location
that's brand new,
that they just built. That's next to the Steve Jobs Theater.
They actually finished that just before the big iPhone event. Because some style,
it's cool.
Some architectural magazine actually got an exclusive look at it. I was wondering what that space is going to be used for.
Yeah, and at first I thought that it was
a telescope.
Some of it, I saw little white edges, so I thought that it might be comped. It might be like a green screen, but there's too much movement. And if you're doing it with an iPhone, I just don't think I would. I think I would probably do all of those, or most of them. There's definitely some effects, off in there, but it was they're really doing a good job at dog fooding their phones, for shooting. It's kind of an amazing. I mean, I don't think anybody else is doing that, or trying to.
Yeah.
By the way, thanks to N2 Tech in our YouTube channel, who says, so you said that the new Mac Mini is 5x5. The Apple TV 4K is 3.66 by 3.66 inches. So it is bigger than an Apple TV.
So you can make a little pyramid with the original.
You could.
Apple, the original Apple
you could do a
TV,
Tower of Hanoi.
The Mac Mini, the new Mac Mini, and the Apple TV.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then your AirPods case.
Yeah,
exactly.
Speaking of AirPods, so 18.1 came out on Monday. I did want to compare the hearing aid experience on AirPod Pro versus actual hearing aids, and I did. And I quickly went back to my actual hearing aids. I'm a big fan of the idea of over-the-counter hearing aids and inexpensive hearing aids, because most people, when they see the price tag, and a lot of insurance policies do not cover hearing aids, and they see it's going to cost them thousands of dollars, say, yeah, I don't need them that bad. And people should have hearing aids who have hearing loss. It makes a difference in quality of life, but also in cognitive decline. I am a big believer also in going to an audiologist, but I did the test on the phone. Apple said that I had no hearing loss, so that wasn't so great.
That wasn't great.
That's not great, but nevertheless, it gave me a curve with a little hearing loss. So, and I applied it. I realized that what the big difference is. So with real hearing aids, even some of the over-the-counter hearing aids, you have a thing behind your ear that's the battery and the logic and the microphone, and then a little tiny piece that comes with a clear tube and goes in your ear. It doesn't block your ear. So when you're wearing hearing aids like my Oticons, and I've worn Starkeys and Resounds as well, you hear you hear everything that's going around naturally because it still goes into your ear hole. The little speaker that you put in there is amplifying the speech frequencies so you can understand speech better. That's all it's doing. And when I put in the AirPods, it seals my ear. And so as a result, I don't get ambient sounds except through the AirPods microphone. So it is a very different experience. It's a little bit isolating because I'm now hearing only what the microphone hears. It is inevitably a little process. It's a little different than just hearing the real sound. And I didn't like it. I felt like it was plugging up my ears. Now, I wear in-ear monitors that do plug up my ears, so it's not that. And I like AirPods for listening to music. But as a day-to-day hearing aid, I think I prefer my regular hearing aids. Having said that, the Apples did exactly what a hearing aid would do. It amplified the speech. It was smart about where you're looking. It did a lot of really cool computational audio.
And again, if you don't,
very good for somebody who only wants to spend $250 and
or someone who only can
$6,000.
They don't. If they don't have the money to buy those, I think that these are going to be great replacements. I think there's not going to be a lot of other things at $250 or even $500 if you get two pairs of them.
So I'm all for it because I think it really is important that people, and I think people get used to the idea that you're wearing AirPods when you talk to people. We'll just know that you're using them as hearing aids, not listening to your favorite podcast instead of paying attention. So I think it's good, but I would say that there is a very much of a difference between audiologist prescribed hearing aids. My audiologist does a lot more than just the beep boop test. I mean, I've done, I think 3 or 4 tests, and then when you get the hearing aids, it's really interesting. They play back speech in a variety of languages and measure what the hearing aid's getting and tune it, all the frequencies. They do a whole bunch of stuff that you're not going to do in a $250 hearing aid. So there is an advantage to going to an audiologist and buying hearing aids. There's a huge disadvantage. It's very expensive. And it's much better than nothing to have AirPods. So there's my review for what it's worth. And if you're a hearing aid user, you should continue to use your hearing aids because that is probably a better experience. Yeah. It is for me, for sure. All right, let's talk about 18.1. And I guess, Jason, you said there's 2 because they also released the betas for 18.
For 18.2, which is second wave. So we basically got the first wave of Apple Intelligence has gone out to everybody this week. And the second wave has gone out as a developer beta, which again, I think Apple's being really clever here of kind of, when they put out the iPhone, they also put out a public beta of the first wave of Apple Intelligence. So they couldn't be accused of not making it available, at least in some form, if you wanted to get it. And now when you talk about the first wave shipping, you also sort of need to talk about the second wave, which we've seen because it's actually shipping in a way as a developer beta. So they're trying to broaden like what is in Apple Intelligence as they go. So there are a whole bunch of new features. In fact, it's I think a much more impressive collection of things in the 0.2 developer beta than what shipped in 0.1. 0.1 is very mild. I think what I've noticed, especially on social media in the last day or so, is we cover this stuff closely, right? We watch it, we think about it, we talk about it here, but the vast majority of people don't. They see those ads, they see the branding for Apple Intelligence, and then they update to 18.1 where it's like, welcome to Apple Intelligence. And what I've noticed is a large number of deep misunderstandings about what's going on. that I don't blame the people for. I really blame Apple for misinforming them about it. The one that I keep seeing more than anything else is even some reasonably well-informed people who say, oh, great, Apple Intelligence is here with point one. I'm going to try out Siri and see if Siri's any better. And what can I tell you? It's not. Like, the better Siri stuff, Siri's better at one very specific thing, which is if you sort of stammer, stumble over your words, correct yourself, it will be better at understanding what you're saying. But in terms of querying sources and understanding what's on your screen and stuff like that Apple has promised, that's not going to happen. A lot of that stuff's not going to happen until next spring. So I think this is Apple reaping what it sows a little bit in terms of overpromising what's in Apple Intelligence right now, and people maybe misunderstanding it and thinking that this is a done deal and it's all baked in there, when in fact it's, point one, it's summaries and some writing tools and not even the image generation stuff, because that's coming in point two. So it's a very light Apple Intelligence debut, and that's okay. It's fine.
Yeah. It's I think notably it's the harmless features, the ones that are like notification summaries, which in itself people who've been testing them have had certain feelings about, but we're not talking about they're not introducing any image editing tools. They're not introducing any like do your job for you, do your homework for you tools. It really is baby steps. They're very, very content to. And Craig Federighi actually, Joanna Stern at the Wall Street Journal posted a 20-minute interview with Craig Federighi about Apple Intelligence. So clearly they really want to get that messaging out that this is not the finished feature. This is just the first thing that we're releasing on a long continuum of features. I mean, for heaven's sake, they're still calling it beta, and technically speaking, there is a waiting list for it. It's not activated immediately. I mean, to be fair, it only took like. I was expecting, oh gosh, maybe I downloaded it yesterday. I was thinking, oh God, I hope I have time to take. They approved me for it before like Tuesday show, and I got in like an hour or two. But they're not expecting everybody to be using this aggressively immediately, nor are they prepared to. But they also know that. It's not like BlackBerry and Microsoft and Android having to react to the presence of the first multi-touch iPhone on the market, where they know that, okay, doom is coming on a swift horse. We need to actually get things out really, really quickly. AI is going to have some sort of an impact. It's going to power some features that people are certainly going to expect in their phone, but it's not going to drive sales really for at least another couple of years until everyone figures out what the table stakes are for AI on a mobile device.
So when I put 18.1 on there, I did not get a pop-up or anything. So I realized, I still don't have it. So there is a new entry for Apple Intelligence in the settings, and I asked for it just like literally 5 minutes ago, and it's now preparing it. So the wait is not long.
It's weird. I got the pop-up on my iPad. I did not get the pop-up on my Mac, which was kind of weird.
Yeah, I haven't seen it on the Mac either. So I didn't get it anywhere. But interestingly, I applied for it on the phone, and we're looking at my iPad, and it says preparing as well. So I think
once they approve you for one device, you get access to it for the entire Apple account. When I was approved on the iPad, immediately it appeared on my Mac as well.
So I was hoping that I could, as like you, Andy, I was hoping I could play with it on camera here, but I guess I'll let you guys play with it. The story in the Wall Street Journal, Joanna Stern says, Apple Intelligence isn't very smart yet, and Apple's okay with that. Are they really okay with that?
Yeah, exactly.
They have to be.
Yeah, they're saying a lot of things that are signature for them, which is very positive, which is we don't have it. We're not like Google, we're not like OpenAI, where we are trying to build an entire industry based on artificial intelligence. Those two companies, they have plans that go way beyond like a smart assistant on your phone or autocomplete text on your phone, which is pretty much what Apple seems to be lending themselves to. Let's add features to this specific line of Apple products. They really Google wins if they become the render farm, the compute farm for artificial intelligence applications and research. So that's the game that they're playing. Apple realizes that they can play the slow game, and actually they will no one's gonna complain to them about saying, oh well, we're being very, very conservative. Meanwhile, they're technically, yes, you could say they're behind, but they're also not getting a whole bunch of like alarming press coverage about stupid things that their latest product did in the AI space, like some other companies that we could easily talk about. There was one of the most interesting things in the Craig Federighi piece was that even when it comes to image editing, he said that they're being very, very conservative. There was a lot of discussion about, like, I mean, there are things that are really just instinctively cool and applicable and makes sense to a lot of people. Which is, again, I got a picture of my kid at Disney World. Unfortunately, there was like a guy in the background with a Party Naked T-shirt on, and I really don't want to have that like in the background. It's cool when you're using Adobe Lightroom or using a Google product. You just simply tap on the guy and he simply disappears and is filled in with more Disneyland. But Craig was saying we're worried about what is the truth of the picture, and should we be responsible for altering the truth of the picture?
Interestingly,
now's a great time to talk about it.
Gemini on the Pixel 9 does allow you to completely alter the picture with fantasy.
Yeah.
That's something Google does. Apple's decided they don't want to do that, huh?
And that's also perfectly legitimate. I mean, it's not just because they don't do it doesn't mean that it's a thing. If they prohibit an Adobe app from doing that on the iPhone, there's also a big component of Apple Intelligence where ChatGPT is if the Apple Intelligence can't handle something and wants to send something out to ChatGPT, it'll send something out to ChatGPT. Isn't that really, really Romulan-like in cleverness, where they're basically saying that anything that could be really, really controversial, that could get us in trouble, we're happy to let somebody else do that, and you can blame them for that. Meanwhile, we'll give you some warnings about sending something out to ChatGPT, and then our hands are clean.
Interestingly, this is literally 5 minutes later. It's now saying, okay, you've got it.
The wait's not very long. I mean, you're mostly just.
Why are they even doing that then?
Well,
I mean,
so they're having you download the models, and I think they also want to function to gate this in case there are issues.
In case it's crazy,
especially since some of their stuff is on the cloud server. And if they feel overwhelmed, they can limit the people coming in to get Apple Intelligence. So they've got a few ways of kind of like controlling it. But you do also have to download the models. And so that's part of the process. And that happens afterward. What's happening with the developer beta is really interesting. The people who downloaded that right away and asked for access to the image generation tools, many of them got them, but everybody since then has not gotten access to them. They haven't. I haven't heard. I think Micah maybe got access the other day, but I still don't have it. Very few people I know even have it. So there is something going on in the developer beta side where they are being a little more limited in rolling those features out to devices, which is also interesting.
Yeah, that was pretty quick. That was a few things it's going to do, and that's it. Yeah. The summaries might be good. Are they good? Did they do a good job?
Yeah. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're good. They're very helpful. Sometimes you get apps that really spam you with summaries or with notifications, and if you've got like a smart door lock and it says like the door opened and closed and opened and closed and opened and closed, it will say. The door opened and closed a lot. It most recently closed at this time. And so which is all you really need to know, right? Or for me, it was my home like irrigation controller where it was like the irrigation system ran and then it concluded at this time. And that's all I needed to know. And I didn't need to know more.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's actually much needed.
Yeah, not 100% perfect. Sometimes it gets it wrong, but I would say more useful than not.
Yeah, and just the simple ability to say, here's a whole bunch of text I don't have time to read right now. Please summarize it for me so I can prioritize what I will actually read. That is like taking the Party Naked guy, T-shirt guy from the background of a Disney World picture. That's another one of those things that is immediately relevant to so many people. Those little things, they work fine too. And also, let's not forget that when they're probably gating access also because for a lot of the features that are not being done on a device, that's all being done on Apple servers, on Apple's custom Apple Silicon and their private security system. That means that they can't just simply buy more compute if they are being overloaded at any one time. They have to buy more land. they have to get more servers up and running.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if Apple starts to do like the notebook LM stuff that Google's doing is just mind-bogglingly good. Yeah. Like just mind-bogglingly good.
Yeah, Meta. Did you see Meta last week released their version of it? And it sounds crappy. It's like they had to do it.
I'm not even talking about the
Audio
podcast.
Not the
thing
podcast
cute.
thing. Oh, okay. Just in
I'm
general.
just talking about you take a bunch of documents, you throw them in there, and start having natural conversations with them, and you're just like, what?
I've been a fan of this for some time. This
well, and this is all there for Apple. It's all there for Apple to do, right? Like they can connect, notes or notes with different tags or whatever. Like imagine Apple building all that in their system, but it's going to take, that's probably a next cycle kind of thing for them because they're still getting up to speed. But there's still good stuff. Like in point one, I mean, we should mention writing tools because writing tools is in point one. And although
it's interesting, it doesn't write for you. Or it doesn't start right, like it seems like it'll rewrite things for you, but it's not like ChatGPT, like write me a thing.
Right.
That,
in point two, it does let you do that using ChatGPT, but in point one, it doesn't. But still, as a writer, I can tell you everything I write gets worse when I put it through writing tools. But that is not surprising, right? Because I'm actually a writer and I do this for a living. But the truth is, lots and lots of people struggle with the written word. People who are very smart, but that writing never came naturally to them, and they feel very uncomfortable. And there are also a lot of people for whom English is not their primary language or their first language. And so
look at all those manuals.
Not about the people that are like above the bar and above average. It's about the people who really struggle getting more confidence to know that that the software that comes on their Mac or on their iPhone can make sure that what they're writing makes sense or is professional or anything like that. I think that we need to acknowledge that because it would be very easy to poo-poo it and say, oh, this is a silly feature. But actually, I think it'll be a big deal for a lot of people. And my kids can't write a professional email or cover letter to save their lives. And, that's one of the advantages of using this is instead of sending their text to me to vet, you press the professional button and it looks better. Also, a friend of mine pointed out, if you're really mad at somebody and you're sending them an angry email, if you can just stop long enough to go, please
make this nice.
It just back off a little. Just back off.
The make nicer button is really great. And
there's an actual make nicer button. No, friendly they call it.
Make more friendly.
Friendly. It's got a smiley face.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it brings you towards the mean, right? And so the issue is if you're below the mean, it's great. And if you're above the mean, it's not as good.
Yeah, because LLMs are all about flattening everything to the average,
basically the
right?
mean.
To the average. And that's why they're the cliched and they're kind of boring and they're kind of obvious. But if you struggle with writing, and I really no judgment here. My dad was an incredibly smart guy. And I mean, he couldn't write to save his life. He just couldn't. I remember him writing things down on a notepad and I'd be like, what is this? Because I was always super verbal. Like for people like that who are then put in a situation where they have to send an email for their job, or they have to send a text, and it's very important, and they're completely at sea. To be able for the OS just built in to throw them a life preserver and say, we can help you is a big deal.
There's a lot of things that are give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Like, like I write a lot of proposals and there's got to be a cover letter, for it. And they won't accept it if you don't have a cover letter, but no one reads the cover letter, but it has to be reasonably good. Yeah. It has to cover the things that you need to say or whatever. And I just say, I just tell ChatGPT, write me a cover letter. These are the highlights. This is the thing. I want it to be formatted with the address and blah blah. And it'll ask me questions if you don't know what you're supposed to do. It asks me a couple of questions, and boom, there's a cover letter. You just put it on.
One of the most clever features in the writing tools that are in point one that are out there right now. You can make an executive summary. Essentially, it's called like make it a bulleted list or something like that. But it's an executive summary. We know what that feature is. That feature is for an executive, a boss that you're working for, who fancies himself so important that I'm not going to read paragraphs. Just give it to me in a bulleted list. Yeah. And so it makes a bulleted list with little bold face points with colons and then like a little one-liner about it. It is making an executive summary. And again, you should look and make sure it actually summarizes the points you want. But it's kind of brilliant where you're like, okay, do you as a worker need to wade through a 4-page document and generate an executive summary?
How do you do that? You have it in a text. So you might, if it's she did this with her interview with Federighi, and presumably she used Whisper AI or something to transcribe it.
You select and you choose writing tools, and then in this case, it's called Create Key Points. I mean, they might as well be create learnings, right? It is for the boss who wants bullet points, but it will do that. It will do so you can generate a summary or create key points, and it's really smart. So in point 2. to Alex's point, not only in point 2 can you just write anything and it will say, I will use ChatGPT and give you something back, but you can also, they're opening it up in point 2 where you can give it particular nuance. So instead of saying all these pre-baked things, make it friendly, make it more professional, you can also say, like in the box, you can click and type, make this a little bit funny, but not too funny, or make this have
like
some puns in it, or whatever, and it will do that. So you don't have to be limited to the pre-baked stuff if you've got a pre-baked, because in the end, it's not so much about Apple controlling it, I think, with the pre-baked as it being something that I believe for a long time, which is anytime somebody with an LLM tells you, look, it's everybody's favorite interface, a blinking cursor in a blank box that you have to type with something to coerce it to do something. It's like, I really like the idea that there's a professional button and a happy button, but they are letting you, if you have a very specific need in point 2, you can actually do that.
Yeah. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Andy. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that this is it's so much fun to be like our age and be able to see the transition between what marks you as someone who's really, really good at using digital tools. And now we're at the dawn of a new age where it's like, be really, really good at explaining what you want and be really, really good at encouraging the tool that you're working with to correct what you don't think is appropriate or correct for the problem. So whereas at one point, it's no longer technically necessary to be this all-star of 8 different frameworks and programming languages. The fact that you know to start a conversation with, "Hi, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what this is the results I'm kind of looking for." I mean, it's amazing to think that the idea of politeness is now a technical skill, and historically that has not always been the case.
Well, and I think that the other thing is just that I mean, I don't know whether AI is going to take over or not, but I will say that if you latch onto some of these things, like again, when we look at LM, which I'm just kind of a little bit obsessed with, is that you throw a book in there. I threw a book in and it built a podcast of it. This is like 300, 400 page book. Yep. It built a podcast with better description than I could have made. Like the podcast was better than any way I could have, and it made up stuff that I was like, oh, that's really insightful of that book, and I just never thought of it. I was like, I never thought of it that way, and I think that then I became really obsessed with, I really want to throw every book in. So I started trying to figure out, like, how do I get all my Kindle books out of that format so that I can get it in? But I realized with Apple, eventually you're just going to be able to look at all my book library and just let me interrogate my book library. Like group these books.
That is super cool.
20 books on the Civil War together. And then I'm going to ask, what were the most important points of Grant's career, or where did he do this? Or when was he sitting on? There was a point where Grant was on the side of a river and the Confederates were sneaking over. What battle was that? And
never fight uphill, me boys. Never fight uphill.
And not just that, but thinking about, like, I use Reader a lot, REEDER, to keep on track of all kinds of different news sources and blogs that I really, really like, and to aggregate all those into a subset of things I want to read later or save or whatever. I can't wait for the day when, just as through the sharing sheet, like the Reader app just simply has a connection to an LM that can do basically Notebook LM or something like that, where I can be driving on an hour-long commute or on the train or whatever, and it's just reading me, not necessarily giving me the same experience as like doing text-to-speech and reading these things, but basically, well, here are you saved, like, you thought that 96 articles were interesting, let's give you an overview of what and then if it's about to move on, I say, actually, no, stay more. Did that article about what's happening in Indonesia, did it sound as though they were banning the use of iPhones in Indonesia, or just actually and I can stop, make a note about that. That's the sort of thing we can start to interrogate back, and that's exactly what they demonstrated back in at Google I/O this year. Yeah.
So what I feel like that is the next phase of Apple Intelligence, and it's going to be interesting because that's not going to happen until next year. That's a 25, 26 product cycle thing, because one of the little catches that shows you that Apple is behind is the stuff that Apple's building now is, for the most part, walled off with Apple's stuff, right? Like, it's Apple building Apple's purpose-built stuff that ties into Apple Intelligence. intelligence. And if you talk to developers, app developers, other than app intents, which will allow Siri to control their apps and use features from those apps this spring sometime, there's nothing in there. Like, I know multiple app developers who are like, so there's an LLM running on the iPhone now. Wouldn't it be nice if Silvio Rizzi, the developer of Reader, or Marco Arment, the developer of Overcast, could use the LLM to do something? But right now they can't. The only way they could do it is they would have to train their own model, put it in their app, and then, run it on device, which they could do. But wouldn't it be better as an app developer if you could use Apple's models?
Do you think that'll happen?
Isn't it great?
I think it'll happen next year.
Yeah,
but isn't it great that as part of the broader strategy? And again, this is why if anybody needs to discuss if Apple is behind an AI, it depends on what you mean by behind. When they first outlined their multi-year plan, some of the most impressive stuff was, and by the way, we are going to have basically a framework so that an app like Reader could simply say, "Hi, AI apps, I am capable of doing this. If you ask me in this way, I will give you these answers for that." And the ability to say, and if you don't want to use our language models, or our AI models, bring on your own. They will interface just nicely. So it doesn't feel as though Apple would have to either enter into a really intimate relationship with the developer to make that happen, nor would the developer have to do that much more than what is strictly required to make that app have that function. It's super exciting.
Again, Apple has access to all of your personal data in which they are purportedly keeping it secret.
Oh, so does Google.
And secure. And so the issue there is that if you as Apple builds that out and provides it back to the developers, where this is where cutting off the developers makes sense. Because I don't want everybody to be seeing all the things that I'm a pretty boring guy, but most of the time, but you can imagine, I don't want some random thing to be digging through all my email or digging through all these other things. And I think that is the advantage that Apple has over everybody else, is as they build this out, they control the hardware and the process, and they have this 3-layered system. And at first, that outer layer is going to be 90%. And by 5 years from now, it'll probably be 20%. And 10 years from now, it'll probably be 5%. And everything's just inside of that cloud.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell. So, Jason, you have an article on 6 Colors. Apple releases second wave of intelligence features. What's new in 18.2?
So the modifications to writing tools that I already mentioned, ChatGPT integration, which is a huge one, right? Like you can.
So Federighi talks about this with Joanna Stern in her journal article. They send it out to ChatGPT when the on-device model is insufficient.
Right. That's the idea, is the model actually checks and says, can I answer this or not? And if it can't, then it will offer to take it out to GPT, although you can say, don't ask me, just do it. And you can also say, I pay for ChatGPT and here's my login, and then it's integrated, and then you use their terms instead of whatever Apple has negotiated. Also, my understanding is, there are limits. Like if you're thinking, woohoo, free ChatGPT, I can use it forever through Siri and it won't matter and I won't get, I believe there are limits. If you use it all the time, you will run up against the limits as a free Apple user. There will be a limit to what you can do with it. But still, that's integrated in Siri, but also, like I said, in writing tools and some other places where you can do that. So it's a start. It's clear that they want to add other models in. They want to add Google in there. They probably want to add other assistants in there. But this is the starting point for that. I would say one of the biggest things in there is Image Playground and the other image generating tools. These are things that we're seeing for the first time. Like I said, there's a waiting list and I haven't been able to get through, but the idea that you can generate things that are Pixar-like or they're hand-drawn-like, but they're like images based on your prompt or based on, again, rather than just having it be fill in a text in an empty box. What a great interface. They're like giving you little tokens where they suggest things that you can add in, and that's very helpful as well. And then Genmoji is a part of that, which I'm actually more excited about because that
looks like fun. Yeah,
because that's trained on the style of Apple's emoji only, and so it's a very limited data set where you're making more emoji in the style of Apple's emoji set, which I think will end up being kind of a fun. Somebody sent me a picture of like a duck with sunglasses on, dressed up like one of the characters from Miami Vice, like, t-shirt and bright colored jacket. And I was like, but it's an emoji. And I'm like, I don't know what we call this emoji. Cool duck. But it was great. And it looked like an emoji. So there's some of that in there. And then they've got this wand feature for when you're using the pencil, which is interesting. You're taking notes, and the idea is you sketch something out, and then you go to the wand tool and you circle it, and it basically generates a better version of the dumb thing that you sketched. Of course, Apple's examples for this are terrible because Apple can't bear to show bad looking art in its example. So like at WWDC, they did this where somebody drew this beautiful temple, hand drawn, and then they circled it and it turned into like an AI generated version of a temple. And I was sitting there thinking, well, don't do that. Like, that was a beautiful drawing. Change my ugly drawing, because I'm bad at it. I'm really bad. So I'm looking forward to trying that feature out, because that might be an example where I draw a stupid stick figure doing a thing, and then I go, hey, make this look better, and have it do that. So the three different kinds of image generation in there are I think, a big part of it. And then there's some more stuff. Visual intelligence, which they showed off with the iPhone 16, is there, although it's really just like a ChatGPT or Google reverse image search or translation app right now. It needs to be way smarter about analyzing the photo and suggesting things you can do with it. But again, developer beta 1, that may be on the way. And good news for people who are not in the US. In point 2, you can use, it's still English only so far, but if you're in Canada, UK, Australia, New Zealand, or South Africa, English, you can be in your local English localization and use Apple Intelligence in that language, which is a step up. And then there are some more languages that are coming next year.
Do you know anything about the search, being able to ask Shlomo questions that and pull answers out of your Photos library? Because I just got access to Ask Photos on Google Photos, and it really is like a very, very powerful tool for all that little data that you accidentally even unintentionally collect through.
Google also does that with screenshots, right, Andy?
Yeah.
The idea
so
of being
anything that
using
syncs up with your
screenshots
Google
almost
Photos.
as a database of things you've seen and
Plain
want to
text
keep
search
track of.
in Photos got good with this go round, where it's just you type anything in there and it does an amazing, after it's indexed your photo library, which it does locally, it does an amazing job of finding what you're looking for. And Siri is tied in with it. I haven't tested that, but it should be better at that. And again, next year, it's also adding a whole bunch of those features where if you're looking at a photo, you should be able to say, can you find other photos that are like this?
Yeah.
And it knows what photo you're looking at. But that's not yet. But because one of the reasons they made search so good in Photos is because they knew that would be a way that the assistant could go and make a quick photo query and get you what you wanted.
Yeah,
Have you played much with
just to give you a quick example. Like, as soon as I had Ask Photos, I asked a question: What time does the cheese shop close today? And because there's a new cheese shop that opened 2 weeks ago, I took a picture not of the sign that says this is a cheese shop, but just the little hand-markered sign in the window of what the store hours are, and it correctly said, closes at 6 p.m. That's the sort of stuff that your Apple users are going to get access to. It's a transformative sort of thing.
People already use their camera to kind of make notes. I take pictures of signs on the
too.
street.
Yeah,
I do it all the
it's
time,
really
but I
useful.
don't. But then you have to kind of know where you're going. Like, I think that there's going to be a point where, like, I always take when I'm at the airport, I always take a picture of the number, J5 or A, whatever.
Where
so
did I
that when
park?
come back, I remember where it is.
Saying that to your watch and getting the answer. Yeah.
Just imagine it just telling you. Now, nowadays, your watch or your phone will tell you where you parked. So it's less. I've been learning that it's less important to do that, but still being able to take pictures of stuff somewhere in the world and have it just contextually remember that is going to be really exciting.
Yeah.
This is really what how AI is going to change the world, is in these little details that are going to subtly be incrementally added to your life. So I think Apple's is probably pretty smart. They don't feel any rush to do this. Google released everything all at once. Apple says, no, we're going to dribble it out to you. Well, we want to get it right. And it really is that. It's like the ATM machine, it became part of our lives. Now we wouldn't dream of walking into a bank.
Or we don't even go to the ATM anymore.
That's true. That's a good point. Who needs cash? Right.
It was like moving, but like even just the little things like the photo cleanup is so well done in Photos. Like, you just open stuff up and you just start selecting things. I just want to get rid of all these things.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's kind of
You
magical.
hated the new photos. Have you come around?
I don't. I hate the new photos on my iPhoto, but on my Mac, I'm fine with it. Like it works the way I expect it to. So I still don't use. I just kind of stopped using photos on my phone. Like I take camera pictures and then I wait until I'm sitting in front of my computer.
But it syncs to your Mac, which is nice.
Yeah, so I use it on my. I've like my workflow has adjusted to my dislike for photos.
So your dislike is only on iOS. It's not on.
It's the iOS. It's the phone app that just drives me absolutely crazy. I still feel like I can't. Like it's selecting things I don't want to select, and it's finding things I don't want to find, and I'm like, I don't want it to do any of these things. Like I just want to, I just want to find the photo that I want to show someone while I'm standing there, and it never does that. Like
one of these days, I want to see what you're doing when we're together in person, because I don't understand why it is that for you. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I'm just like, so I'm just like, okay, and then again, I just noticed it as I was doing the beta. You got to get, I guess I used to open up photos just for fun. Like, hey, what is it going to suggest to me that I should, I could send photos to my kids or my wife or whatever, fun photos. So photos was like this fun thing, and it just ceased to be that way. And so, and it's just, and it was kind of sliding for me as well. But anyway, point is, the photos on the Mac is great. Like it's super powerful. And I'm like the distraction removal is, I was playing with it since I got, and I hadn't played with it until it got released today, and I started opening it up and just starting like get rid of this, and it highlights everything. So you just kind of tap on it, like no, or if it doesn't highlight it, you circle it and it just disappears. And it's it's not perfect. There was a couple things I couldn't figure out based on depth or whatever, but for the most part, it just nails it. I think people are going to use that. This is what Apple's really good at. Here's a simple thing that everyone's going to use all the time. like they're just going to clean up their photos all the time without having to think about it. And it's just built into their computer. They don't, they just don't think about it. Cleaning that up will be second nature.
Adobe added that to Photoshop and Lightroom. And it's just literally just anything you think is a distraction, get rid of it.
And I've been taking them into Photoshop like I've been doing in Photoshop is incredible. Like it's doing something way past what Photos is doing, which is that I get a lot of photos of guests for our shows, and they're, little weird square, whatever. I just move them to where I want on a 16:9 image and just say, make up the rest of the image. And it just goes blah, and it just, and there's two of them that don't make any sense, but the first one or the second one usually works. So. Yeah.
The number of times, I mean, I won't get into an hour about how much I love these features, but the number of times where I've had to throw out an image because damn, I can't crop it. It's at the wrong angle. And unfortunately there's like part of this person's hockey stick that's been cut off.
Right.
And the ability to simply, you can straighten out that angle and we'll fill in most part of the background. If you want to go even so far as to say, please regenerate part of the stick that's outside of the frame, do that too.
Well, I had to
and
do
it's
stuff
like,
where,
God,
I would do something like, hey, put a countdown clock here, but there's all this text here. I just like select it in Photoshop and just get rid of that. And then I just put it where I need to go. And it's, this again, these are the little things that I think Apple's going to do well that really make more of a difference for everyday life than a lot of the bigger things that we're, that we're thinking about.
Couple of quick stories before we get to our picks of the week, because it's getting about to be that time to wrap things up. Apple has won its lawsuit against Massimo over Massimo's Health Watch, the one they don't sell anymore, and the jury awarded him a whopping $250.
I don't think that they.
This is not the blood oxygen thing. This has nothing to do with that. This is kind of, I think, Apple's revenge.
They sued for this wearable, trying to say that Massimo infringed on so many of our patents, hoping that they could then use that to roll it into a way of getting that back again. So they won. They lost nearly every claim. I think they won on 2 of them. The reason why the award was so low was because Apple just sued for $250. They didn't want it.
They just
what they wanted.
Money.
Not only that, but they wanted a jury trial. They did not want just the judge to evaluate this and pronounce a ruling, and that's like the minimum you can ask for in a jury trial. So nothing. It was a waste of time.
Yeah.
$250. You can buy like 2 dozen burritos for that. Okay. That's not a small number of burritos.
We also have learned that Apple is testing a blood sugar app, which is interesting. It's certainly something they would like to be able to measure blood sugar in a watch. That's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder.
Does not do that.
I will say that if people who make sugary foods and ultra processed foods, if they think that Atkins was a problem, everybody having a glucose monitor is the end. Like it is like as soon as they see the impact of their food, and it's that easy, and they're not paying $400 and then $200 a month to do it. If it's just on their watch, it's a extremely disruptive technology to put into a watch and sell millions of. It will change buying. I
agree.
Dramatically. And so it's really, that's why they're working on it, is because it's going to make, when they say it's going to make a big difference in health, they mean it.
Yeah, even for people who are not at risk of diabetes, the idea of why do I feel like crap today? And then they just happen to look at their watch. I got 2 notifications saying that my blood sugar spiked. Like, okay, maybe that happened exactly when I decided to eat an entire cheesecake. Wow, that was probably the reason why I felt like crap for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and having it on your wrist all the time, and then it being able to send you alerts, and it being able to say, hey, you just ate something. What did you eat? And it will eventually know what you ate. Like those are the things, and it starts to build this thing, and everyone's going to realize that processed foods are worse than smoking.
Yeah. If you've always wanted to watch Kevin Costner die of dysentery, maybe you'll get your wish. Oregon Trail, the action comedy movie, now in development at Apple. Kevin Costner is not attached to the project, but we can always hope, right?
Well, again, he's a man with a vision. Just don't let him direct or write, or if he's one of the first people who dies, so he can just simply say
get
the
out
craft
of
service stables.
Right?
He has to have a great track record for Westerns of the past.
Yeah, let's put it that way.
Yeah,
and Yellowstone fans is still a little
so
salty.
This was the Hollywood exclusive. Hollywood Reporter has an exclusive. The sources tell them that the movie will feature a couple of original musical numbers in the vein of Barbie.
Lord. You've got dysentery. Oregon Trail, ladies and gentlemen. You've always wanted it. Now you've got it. An action movie with music coming to Apple TV sometime. Probably next year, I would guess. And finally, the Starbucks. I know you all remember when Steve Jobs called
the Internet device section here. I want to show you something truly remarkable.
Starbucks.
Which is Google Maps
in the iPhone announcement.
iPhone.
And ordered, what did he order? He ordered coffee for all of us in the audience.
3,000 lattes.
2,000 lattes.
Wrong number.
Yeah. Those, that Starbucks, which was right there in the Yerba Buena Center, is closed. Is closing. That's it. It's gone. It's not a great neighborhood.
I got to say,
finally got the last of those lattes out too.
That Starbucks used to be right across from my office.
Oh, that's right.
There was something horrible going on there at least once a week.
Yeah, it's bad.
Someone crazy coming in yelling, people get into fights. It was, I was surprised it lasted as long as it did. I mean, I went there every day. So, you got to see, I went there probably a couple times a day, probably more than I should have. But that was kind
of it that the San Francisco Chronicle could not find a photo of it without garbage cans in front. But there you have it. These things happen. The 4th Street Starbucks.
Yeah.
Gone. But not forgotten. Actually, it's still there if you want to visit it till November 8th.
Just take a buddy.
Yeah, just don't go alone. Bring your walking cane cum knife. All right, let's take a little break, and then your picks of the week, my friends. You're watching MacBreak Weekly, the club members. We love it. Thank you for being here. We couldn't do it without you. 12,000 strong. Now, I have noticed that the club has kind of plateaued a little bit. So I'm going to have to start ringing the club bell every time we have a new member or something like that. We would really love to get you all, many tens of thousands of people watch this show, but only about 2% have actually joined the club. We'd love to get you all in the club. It makes a big difference to our bottom line. $7 a month. That's all we ask. You get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get additional content. Last week we did Stacy's book club. This week we're going to do Chris Marquardt's photo review and photo news. You photographers will love that. We're looking at all sorts of other things to do. In fact, one of our club members has been lobbying hard for me to do a little on-screen Emacsing, do a little coding, getting ready for the advent of code, which is just about a month off. Maybe we'll do that too, but it's going to take your $7, okay? Just join the club at twit.tv/clubtwit. You can get it for free. This is something new. We have a referral program. So if you tell a friend and they join the club, you get a free month. Tell 12 friends, you get a free year. Tell 144 friends, you probably will never have to pay for Club Twit again. Who doesn't have 144 friends that can get to join the club? I ask you. twit.tv/clubtwit for all the details. And I thank all of our club members in all seriousness, because you've actually kept the lights on here. None of this goes into my pocket. In fact, Lisa and I probably aren't going to get paid for the rest of the year, but that's okay, because John Ashley will. Our hosts will. And the electric bill will be paid and all of that, and that's important. twit.tv/clubtwit. I don't want to tell you what won't happen, or what will happen if you don't join. That's too grim to talk about. twit.tv/clubtwit. Now, I am not buying a Mac Mini because not enough of you have joined the club. So I am tightening my belt as well. This hat I bought a long time ago. This shirt is new, I admit it, but it came out of my retirement savings. Mr. Alex Lindsay, your pick of the week, sir.
So I have a pool, as you've heard before. And knowing what temperature it is important if I decide I want to jump in. And I found that, like, you get a lot of things floating around. You have to go down and look at it. And I got this Inkbird pool thermometer. It floats around in the pool, and I can literally walk near the pool, like out in my office here, and open up my phone, and it just gives me the entire history. So it's sampling every minute. And so it's not just that it's telling me what the temperature is right now. I get to see what all the trends are. So I happen to know that my pool is as warm as it's going to get between 4:45 and 5:30 every day right now. And when the sun changes, it'll change. But being able to see all that data is really, really useful and your phone, it works on Android or iPhone. It's going to connect over Bluetooth. So you do have to be within 20, 30 feet of it. For me, it works pretty much almost the entire pool if I just walk out of my office and I can kind of see what it looks like. But it's not just like, oh, what is the temperature right now? It's what has the temperature been? When is it at the coldest it's going to be? When it's the hottest it's going to be? And you kind of can build your swimming patterns around it. so as swimming has become more of my fitness regime for me, paying attention to when it's warmest or coldest, if you want to do a cold, a cold dip, like where you sit in the cold water. I know
cold dip, the cold
caldarium.
Plunge.
In the caldarium.
I happen to know that if I really want it to be as cold as that pool's going to go, 10 a.m.
9 a.m.
is a good time to sit down. 10 a.m. is a good time sitting there, and it's going to be this is as good as I'm trying to train myself. I asked my brother. My brother has one of those little cold plunge things, and I was like, "What temperature do you like?" And he's like, 40 degrees.
40. Yeah. That's really cold. I know. Yeah. Do you have a sauna that you can warm up before you jump in?
I do.
So there you go.
But
you get really hot, and then when you jump in, 40 degrees isn't that cold.
Yeah, exactly.
For a minute.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's really cold.
For 10 seconds.
Yeah, exactly.
Andy Yanaka, that's good. That, by the way, that Inkbird is not expensive. Less than $30.
Yeah, it's $30.
It's the pool that really can set you back.
Every week. Chemicals. Oh, boy.
Oh, we used to have a hot tub, and I gave it up. It's just too much work to maintain. It's insane.
Yeah, it's so nice.
And I always wanted a pool, but no. Andy Yanako with a little bit of a timely recommendation for us.
Yes, got some sad news during the show. Teri Garr has passed away. Fantastic actress on television, movies. You might remember from...
We should all watch Young Frankenstein just to celebrate Teri Garr's life and times.
She was one of those actresses that was just always working. And Mr. Mom and Oh God, I think were two of her funniest movies. So it's a show. It's pretty sad. But one of the places where she really shined out was that she was one of David Letterman's best guests, because they really had like a brother-sister rivalry, like let's see how much we can annoy each other thing going on, which is why they kept bringing her on again and again and again. So I'm going to recommend, in addition to seeing any of those really great movies, there's a go to Don Giller's Teri Garr collection on Letterman. Don Giller's Teri Garr collection on Letterman. It's available on YouTube. He is the Letterman Show's first longtime unofficial and then official archivist. He literally has every single episode in his possession because he was just recording them all the time, and he has indexed and archived all of them. So well before this happened, he produced a 5-part
creepy
collection.
At all.
It's great. Well, any topic you could think about. Yeah. There was somebody on Reddit. On one of those help me find subreddits, was I know this is impossible, but my great aunt was on this episode in the audience, and I'm trying to find it, and I know this is impossible for this one episode. And I said, here is the person on YouTube.
Talk to Don.
Here is his address, and of course he had it. He was nice enough to produce like a rip of it and provide it to them that same day.
Yeah,
so he has
like
in
a
5
file
volumes.
maker. I think a FileMaker database of all of the everything that's in the Letterman Show. And just to be fair here, the Letterman people would call him for stuff. And now I believe he is at least partially employed by Worldwide Pants, because they have their own YouTube channel, and I think that to some degree he is involved in their.
So was he recording these on VHS tape? I mean,
back in the day,
He started off in from the very, very beginning, for whatever technology was available, like starting in the early 80s. And when there was stuff that I imagine when there was stuff that he couldn't get, he got it. And it took him a while to convert it all to DVD, then took him a while to convert it all to digital, and again, produce that master index. This is why, like on the Letterman channel on YouTube, every time there's like a news item, there's probably going to be a compilation of clips related to that news item posted that same day or the next day, because as Jason said, he has this master database of everything that happened on every single show ever. And so if you want to watch...
Not just Letterman, by the way, lots of other shows.
Well, yeah,
too.
although since he got hired by Letterman's YouTube channel, he can't post new things on his channel because those are for the Letterman channel.
Yeah.
But he's got it's everything. It's amazing. But including... What is it, Andy? A 5-part series of Teri Garr's greatest hits on Letterman. That's just spectacular. You can just watch the whole thing, and it's this is like literally. I don't know about you, Andy. My favorite is that they had her take a shower.
Yes, this is yeah. I'm sorry. They had a show in which the conceit was it's too hot to do a show, so they sent the audience home and they just did the entire show from Letterman's office, and all the guests just like sat on his sofa and they had a chat like in their normal clothes. And again, this goading each other relationship, like take a shower, like jump in the shower, like, and of course they blocked everything off with towels. And the last shot of this episode is Teri Garr, you assume, behind this door, like really showering. I hate you.
Yep.
And so that's part 2. So that's actually the one that I linked in the show notes.
Yeah, so good. It's just a great sense of humor. She was on original Star Trek too.
Was she?
Yeah, in one episode, Assignment Earth, it was with Robert Lansing. It was actually a backdoor pilot. Gene Roddenberry, success of Star Trek wasn't enough for him. He always wanted the next thing, and so he kept on doing these, like, maybe this could be a show with Teri Garr and Robert Lansing where they travel through time and solve crimes, and it wasn't. But there's one episode of Star Trek, the one with the cat where they're trying to stop the NASA rocket launch. Anyway, she's a child of the 60s who has some nice things about like why people are for network TV in 1968, having her explain why the young people were feeling rebellious was kind of interesting. She was great. Yeah. Great.
She will be missed. 79, Teri Garr.
Yeah, multiple sclerosis sucks.
MS, yeah, very sad. But boy, she was wonderful. Really was. And I think it sounds like you like some of her other movies, but I have to say, Young Frankenstein, everybody should just watch that.
Sure.
I knew that everyone's going to be talking about Young Frankenstein, but everything she was in an episode of Newhart, of the Bob Newhart Show. She was Phoebe's mother on Friends for like 4 episodes.
Right. I love her on Tootsie, great 80s comedy. Yeah, with Dustin Hoffman and Bill Murray. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she was Tootsie's
Close Encounters.
There's Teri in the shower.
He was
Teri.
Richard Dreyfuss's wife in Close Encounters too.
You can show this. It's clean, very clean. Lots of soap. Yeah.
Come on, Teri. Go in the shower.
That's so horrible. You couldn't do that today.
So mean, David. You're so
mean, David.
Just get in the shower.
So mean.
Yeah.
so good. Oh, so good.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this edition of MacBreak Weekly. Jason, sorry?
Oh,
Pick the
I'll
week
give
for
you
Jason?
my pick is real quick.
Jason, you got to do a pick before we go.
It's a Halloween pick. It's a Halloween themed pick. For my podcast, The Incomparable, we try to do something that is a Halloween movie. And I had my friend Steve Lutz selected a movie for me that I had never seen, and I don't know how I missed it. Probably because I thought it was something else. I don't love really gross, cynical horror movies. It seems like you should watch 1985's Fright Night, directed by a guy named Tom Holland, who is neither the Spider-Man actor who was not alive then nor the history podcaster, but a third horror movie director, Tom Holland. It's amazing. I highly recommend it to anybody who was like, no, I don't want to watch. It is not a slasher movie. It is a love letter to kind of classic horror and fans of classic horror. The elevator pitch is brilliant. It is literally a kid who likes watching like the late night horror host on the local TV channel discovers that a vampire has moved in next door and nobody believes him. So he has to go to the horror host played by Roddy McDowell, who is very much like, yeah, sure, kid, vampires, because he doesn't believe it either. But I assure you, it is a vampire. He's played by Chris Sarandon right before he was Humperdinck in The Princess Bride. He has never looked more like a beautiful vampire man. And it is, here's my rating on the 80s scale. It is an 80 out of 80 for being an 80s movie. It is the most 80s movie you will find. And if you love 80s retro stuff and horror movies, especially classic stuff, it's Halloween week. Fright Night. It's on Max in the US. 1985. There was a remake, but check out the original. It is fabulous. I loved it.
So
totally
do you
awesome.
listen to the podcast while you're watching?
No, it's not a commentary. You should watch the movie and then you can listen to The Incomparable after if you want. And we talk about how great it is.
No spoilers, though.
Great fun.
Can I ask you one question on the 80s stuff? Does it have an end title song that is like 90% synthesizers?
It does, and in fact, it is performed by the Jay Giles Band, and it is called Fright Night. So it is, again, 80 out of 80 on the 80 scale. Could not be more.
We'll watch it tonight. We watched Rosemary's Baby last night. We'll watch Fright Night.
This is a little lighter than that. It is just more fun.
That's pretty heavy.
It's just silly and fun. It's great. Yeah. Love it.
Thank you, Jason Snell. Go to sixcolors.com. That's his work, his day job. The charts will be coming out Thursday.
Charts on Thursday.
We'll talk about them on next Tuesday. But
maybe put a bat in there or something. I don't know.
Put a bat in the pumpkin. You can find Jason's podcasts at sixcolors.com/Jason.
Oh, you got a little rush in there for the. But I guess if you say Six Colors as a vampire, you're very close to just being
sixcolors.com.
Six Colors.
I love Six Colors. I have a different. My vampire is moving a little bit across the Carpathians.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jason Snell.
Leo.
Andy Anako, GBH. We talked about it earlier. Look forward to hearing you there and whatever secret projects you might be working on for future reference, shall we say. It's great to have you, Andrew. And, of course, Alex Lindsay, officehours.global and graymatter.show. What's going on the office hours?
We had one of the folks from Opus come on, Opus Clip, yesterday, and kind of mind-blowing. Like, there was a lot of things I didn't. I think the thing that it progresses, I usually just kind of throw things into it and see what comes out the other end. And they walked through a lot of those details. And so, anyway, it was really fascinating. So definitely worth checking out.
And a Q&A episode today. Mm-hmm. Which is
we're doing a lot more Q&As. So we'll be doing a lot more Q&As through the rest of the year because we're moving the show to 4K HDR 5.1. We've been experimenting with it and hinting with it. And so there's a big technological jump that we have to do over the next 2 months, and we didn't want to have a lot of external guests. So you'll see a lot of Q&As as we go forward because we're doing a ton of work on the back end to get everything up to what we think is the next level of quality for us. First step is to get it to that really high quality, and the next step will be to put it into the cloud. And so we're doing kind of both of those at the same time.
And the Office Hours T-shirt is now available.
You can get it. The Office Hours T-shirt is out. It's a fundraiser for us. So to keep the lights on, we're selling some T-shirts. But it took us a long time. It took us 4 years.
I like that logo. That's great.
Yeah, it took us again 4 years to get to a point where we're ready to do a shirt. But I don't know when we'll do another one. But we're going to sell these until November 20th, and about $20 of it goes to paying for the AWS and Zoom bills mostly. So
yeah, they add up, don't they?
They sure do. They sure do add up.
Do.
So
yes, they do. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Andy, and thank you, Jason, and thanks to all of our Club Twit members and everybody who watched during the show today. We had, I don't see a number, so I don't know how many thousands of people watching live, but we do love that. I do encourage you, though, if you watch live, to download a copy of the episode as a souvenir of your visit. You can get the live show is 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I said. Next week, 1900 UTC. You can watch on all 8 of those platforms. Club Twit members in the Discord. There's YouTube and Twitch and X.com and Facebook and LinkedIn and Kick. Watch wherever you want, but download a copy too. twit.tv/MBW. There's audio and video there. When you go to twit.tv/MBW, you will see a link to a dedicated YouTube channel that's just MacBreak Weekly, all MacBreak Weekly all the time. A great way to share little clips of the show if you want to pass along some wisdom, some knowledge, or just something that you thought was pretty funny. Speaking of funny, we are putting together our best of shows, and we would love, while you're at the website, to get your picks for the best moments in 2024 for MacBreak Weekly. Can you believe we're coming to the end of 2024? Wow. Go to twit.tv/best of and give us whatever information you have, even if it's just a rough sketch. It was sometime back in April or whatever. The more you give us, the better it'll be. John Ashley will thank you for that. You can also, after the fact, subscribe in your favorite podcast client. That's really the best way to get it. Choose audio or video, and that way you'll have MacBreak Weekly automatically the minute we have edited it down and put it into a nice package. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next time. And as I have said now for 945 episodes, almost 20 years, it's time to get back to work because break time is over. See you next time. Bye-bye.